True,
So
true.
that's
The optimist,
exciting.
the optimist.
We'll take that any day.
You don't have to shovel rain.
Don't have to plow rain either, so that's better. for you.
Right. Yeah, spoken like a true mayor. It's a budget item.
Especially on a Saturday too.
Right. It always seems to happen. Saturday, Christmas, Monday, holidays. Yeah.
Bill, it looks like we have 8 o'clock.
You're good to go.
All right, it's 8 a.m. We're going to start the Finance Committee budget hearings. First, I want to thank everyone for coming in on Saturday. And we're going to kick it off with recreation, and I'm going to hand it right over to you, Director Kemp.
All right, thank you. I think before I lead things off here, good morning, everyone, and very honored to bat lead off for the city this year. I know Director Single wanted to say a few words, and so did Mayor Cooney, so I'm going to let them start, and then I'll jump right in with my presentation.
Okay.
Is that okay, Madam Chair?
Yep, go ahead. Go ahead,
Okay.
Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Madam Chair, Council, Fairview Park residents. If you're enjoying your coffee and we don't put you back to sleep here this morning. But I first want to thank Director Single and Assistant Finance Director Liebitz for their work on the budget. It's always seems to be a perfect storm for them. Audit and budget seem to kind of hit at the same time. So they've been really busy with end of the year stuff. The audit kicked off this week, and you know, I appreciate all their efforts here. And I'd also like to thank Carleen Hayes from the Finance Department for all the support that she's provided them and you know, and our employees last year. Obviously, there were a lot of challenges that we all faced in 2020. You know, in the early stages of the pandemic, we had a lot of concerns about our income tax collections, and fortunately that those projections did not come to fruition. So we were fortunate in that regard. You know, there were a lot of unknowns when this first started, and back in March of last year, some of those unknowns are still with us, and we've factored them into the budget. Nonetheless, even though we went through the pandemic, we're starting 2021 in good shape. You know, the general fund balance January 1st, 2020 was 3.3 million. We're starting with a balance of 5.662 million, and we're projecting to have a $5.3 million balance in the general fund at the end of this year. There are a number of reasons for that increase, but I think you know, some of them we did a good job of managing our costs. You know, with Greg and Deanna, we had savings with Shared Work Ohio. I'd like to thank Carleen Hayes and Director Mary Kay Costello for their work on that. That was a very big, time-consuming project to get it up and running and then to manage it. But thankfully, you know, that they did do that, and we were able to generate some savings there. Our income tax, as I mentioned earlier, was not as bad as projected, and we had stimulus funds from CARES Act and the Bureau Workers' Comp premium refund. So as I mentioned before, there's still a lot of unknowns, so we're going to take a conservative approach going forward. The economy in general, you know, nobody nobody knows where that's headed. So that's something that we're always concerned about because of income tax and how it funds our general fund and a lot of our other dedicated funds. The unknown with the occasional entrant litigation, um, that's still pending. I've been on calls with Cuyahoga County Mayors and Managers Association, and we're keeping a close look on that litigation. But the general consensus is that overall, because of the pandemic, income tax collections are down, not, partly because of the economy, but also partly because of, people were not working in the city that they typically work. So the projections there are that income tax collections for the region are going to be down as a result of this litigation. Um, and we also anticipate that the nonprofit tax here in 2021, that our collections will be down as a result of what happened in 2020. And we are not budgeting for any stimulus payments. I know the Congress passed President Biden's stimulus package early this morning. But we're not budgeting for that. There's always a little bit of uncertainty, obviously, with Washington. So that's not something that we have factored in the budget. And similarly, we've talked to people in Columbus, and there is not going to be a significant Bureau of Workers' Comp premium refund this year. So you're not going to see any of that in the budget. I think overall, when you're looking at the budget, a better comparison is to look at 2019 and 2021. 2020 was just obviously an aberration in so many levels. And going into 2021, because we put off a lot of things, last year, you're going to see an increase in a number of our funds, the rec fund, the permanent improvement fund, sanitary sewer fund coming into 2021. But some of the things that we put off in 2020, we need to do this year. So you might see, a bigger drop, on those than in the past. So, it's, I again appreciate Greg and Deanna's work and keeping us updated on things. We're constantly looking at our collections. We know we have some big projects. We have Ward 5, the sewers that we need to address. And we're working on that now, but we also, that's a big time number. Obviously we have a service garage that, sometimes I pray for lightning to hit it. But that's something that needs to be addressed here in the near future. As you look at some of these big ticket items that would like to purchase, we'd like to have a place to store them so we can maintain their life expectancy. But that's something that we're looking at. And then there's always just the unknowns that pop up and run in the city every day. So we need to be conservative. We are, I feel, being conservative with our income estimates and a little aggressive with our expenditures, and hopefully things turn around. We collect a little more money and don't spend as much as we've budgeted. But I appreciate your time today. There's obviously a lot to it. This is not, if after today there's more questions, please reach out to myself or Greg or Deanna, with any additional questions, and we'll be happy to talk with you about it. So thank you for your time, Councilwoman King, and I would give the floor back to you.
Thank you. Director Singo?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's a first for everything in life, and this is the first time I've Zoomed. So are you all able to hear me?
Yes,
First and
perfectly.
foremost. Okay. Secondly, I was just going to go through like a high level overview, and I have some charts that I prepared now. Liz, if you can share those, or how we'll do this to walk through them.
Just tell us what page you're on, that's all.
Well, I'm not in a book right now. I'm actually, Councilman Minnick, I'm just going to work through a few of the pie charts that I prepared. So the first chart here is general fund revenue. So projecting this year, a revenue collection of $11.2 million. It's broken out as follows: 59% will come from income tax, 33% from property tax, 4% is other, fines and licenses and permits, 3%, and the state share tax is 1%. So you see at the bottom, 6.6 million from income tax, property tax 3.6 million, etc. You can go to the next. There aren't any questions. You can go to the next chart, Liz. So that, again, looking at general fund revenues, you see 92% of the projected $11.2 million that we project to receive coming again from income tax and property tax. So any slowdown there obviously puts a strain on the general fund budget. Next chart, Liz.
Which one is next?
Are there any questions?
They weren't in.
You go to the, that's fine. You can go to that one. That one's okay. The dollar bill. I've used this dollar bill example in many presentations, and individuals see it. They're actually shocked to see how little of their property taxes go to the city. So for Fairview Parks purposes, for every dollar that a resident pays in property tax, the city collects about 12 cents. Almost 61 cents goes to the Fairview Park schools, and about 28 cents goes to the Metro Parks, County Library, and others. So when people see this, they're really shocked, because most residents think that the cities collect the larger percentage of their property tax payments, and that's not the case.
Greg, a quick question. Greg,
Yes,
how much difference is there between the Rocky River City School District, the portion of Fairview Park that's in the Rocky River School District?
I would have to look at that. This chart doesn't show that. I would have to
Correct.
look into that.
Okay, thank you.
Next chart, Liz, if there aren't any questions here.
Which is it?
Yeah, that one's good. The personnel ones, that's fine. Look, go up. No, go down to the one that says personnel cost. There you go. So I look at the general fund costs, or the proposed budget, which is almost $11.5 million. 76% of that cost comes from personnel. And then 24% will be the other category, which would be communications, repair and maintenance, utilities, items like that. So again, the majority of the cost in the general fund is borne in personnel costs, salaries, and benefits. Next chart, Liz, if there are any questions on that one.
Which one, Greg?
You can keep going down. I can just work off whatever you.
Well, the one with administration, everything is before that one. So there's
Okay, you can go up. That's fine. You can go up to the next one. So we look at again, $11.5 million in general fund appropriations. Where is that being spent? 57% of that cost is appropriated to police and fire services, 17% public service, and then admin, 6%. Other would be like transfers, things of that nature. So if there are any questions there, we can go to the next.
I have a question, if I may. So I'm looking at this, and police and fire represents 57% of our general fund. So does this not take into account the police pension levy and the fire levy? Are there additional funds that push that above 57%?
So the pension cost is included in this figure. The salaries and benefits paid out of the EMS fund and out of the fire levy fund are not included in this figure. So this is just strictly general fund. 57% of the general fund appropriations are borne by or appropriated to police and fire services.
Okay, so I understand that in any business in any city, personnel is always going to be your largest cost. And I'm not going to debate that in the merits of it because it's absolutely worth it. But I do have a question for this 57%. How does that compare? I know you can tell us Brook Park probably off the top of your head, but is that a reasonable number, an unreasonable number? Because I'm looking at service and they're at 17%. And granted, I mean, they have infrastructure costs like police cars and fire trucks. Plow trucks are not cheap either, even though they are less. I mean, is this a reasonable figure that we're looking at?
So this chart will not show equipment. It's just strictly the daily operation, the operations of the department. So again, salaries, benefits, utility costs, communications, travel, things of that nature. So strictly just operational costs. In most cities, the police and fire services, are the largest portion of the general fund budget.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions there? Or Liz, you could go to the next chart, which probably is the rec center, I believe. Okay. We go to the revenue one first, and then we'll go to the next appropriations. Is there one more below that? Okay, perfect. Thank you. So segueing into the presentation for the recreation department. So we look at total revenues for the recreation center for this year. We have budgeted almost $3.7 million to be collected as estimated revenue in the recreation fund. Of that, 70% is income tax, 12% is property tax, membership fees make up 6%, grants are 3%, and then other would be their program fees for the most part. So again, any slowdown in income tax or property tax is going to have put a strain on the budget for the recreation fund. Any questions there, or go to the proposed appropriations for the recreation fund? As you can just go back up to the other chart, that one there. So the proposed expenditure and the appropriations in the recreation fund, a little bit over 4.6 million. How's that made up? 34% personnel, 34% debt service, 4% building improvements, park improvements make up 8%, and then the other category, again, that would be utilities, maintenance of facility, communication cost, that makes up 20%. Any questions on that slide?
Oh, I have a lot of questions, Greg, but I don't know if there are any we can answer today.
Okay.
I'm looking at the debt service, and I know we've talked about this a lot, that, we carry a lot of debt on the rec center, and then to see that if our income tax takes a slide, what are we going to cut? What are we going to cut? I mean, the debt service is significant portion of this. You'd have to cut personnel or building improvements, and we can't cut building improvements. We've not really done a fantastic job of keeping up on what has to be done. I mean, is there a recommendation for how we can start reducing the debt service? I know we just flattened out some payments, but I mean, this is a very large chunk that our taxpayers are paying for over and over and over again. And it doesn't sit right with me, especially when the people who actually use the building only account for 6% of the revenues.
Well, the residents voted for it, so this is what they, put in place. We're all, that's why we came to you to look at ways to refinance the debt. And, it's, right now it's an obligation that we, have to abide by. So it's a challenge, of course. And, Carrie's going to talk to you a little bit about how we're going to face that challenge. There's, we're looking at programming, we're looking at costs, but you can't, it's an obligation, the debt that you can't, at this point, you can't get rid of. So it's something it's been in place. The residents wanted the Gemini Center project. It's a gem to our city. And, we're always looking at other ways to increase revenue and, and eliminate costs. But with respect to that, it's an obligation that, we're hoping to lessen, but at this point, we haven't been able to refinance that because the market hasn't borne it.
That's fair. There's not an expiration on the levy that the voters voted for on this, is there?
No,
Okay.
no. And as you recall in our discussions, maybe it was late last year, early this year with Matt Stuzinski, what we're trying to accomplish is to smooth out the debt service to better align with the revenues that are being collected. That 34% in dollars this year, as you see, just a little bit below, is $1.6 million in money. That's what we're trying to smooth that debt service out. If we can't refinance this debt, in later years, that debt service number increases to around $2 million or a little bit over $2 million in some years. So again, we're trying to smooth it out long term to a number that we're really at today, $1.6 million, maybe $1.5 million if we can get it, as low as $1.5 million. So it's a challenge moving forward, and it's something that the administration is aware of, and I know council is as well. You ask where you would cut costs if revenues would drop, and that's in personnel. We've had extensive discussions over the last couple of weeks with Mary and Carrie about part-time wages and ways to reduce the personnel costs there. So I know they're working on that. And again, as I said, I think on Monday night, their initial number for part-time wages was around $600,000. They were able to cut that down about $50,000 or $60,000. So I know they're working on ways to reduce that cost. So it's something obviously that we keep an eye on very closely, and we'll continue to do so.
Thank you.
That's all I have. I just, if there are any other questions for me, if not, I'll turn it over to the mayor or Carrie to begin the recreation presentation.
Mayor, do you have any other comments before we go to the rec center?
Yes, just real briefly on rec, it's a big challenge for Carrie and Mary, with the center being closed for 3 months last year. And it's tough for them in projecting what we're going to see this year. I know Carrie is, we've talked about, he's going to be getting reports on usage and expenditures, and we're going to be keeping track of that, and we're going to share those with council on a quarterly basis to see what type of trends are developing at the rec center and the recreation department, to address, the questions, that Councilwoman Waring brought up, but also, are there better ways that we can provide the services there and work on the costs? He joined us September of last year. He's been, working on these things. I know Mary's been a very good resource in helping, as she always has there. So I think, I appreciate all their work that they've done. It was a challenging year for the rec department last year. I met with them last week, and they got a lot of exciting things planned for this year, and understand too the challenges that we face in running a rec center. So with that, I would turn the floor to Madam Chair. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, Director Kemp?
Good morning, everyone. And thank you for your time. Liz, do you have the PowerPoint, or is this something where you can share my screen?
I do have the PowerPoint, yes.
Great. All right. Thank you. So here's the annual report that I shared with you all just for reference on things. I know we'll probably focus more on the PowerPoint presentation, but I wanted you to have some of the parts of this so you can see some of the challenges that we've had this year, how our staff breakdown is, some of our fiscal highlights for the year. But diving deeper into things, let's go with this here. So next page, if you will, please. I know a lot of this has already been covered by Director Single and Mayor Cooney, but you know, some of the challenges that we saw in 2020 was the Gemini Center closure and reduced programs, which definitely hurt a lot of our revenues. We deferred a lot of major projects. Amongst those, the Diamond Bright, Morton tennis court upgrades, and new cardio equipment. We saw, you know, a significant amount of staff layoffs, and our revenues decreased significantly. Some of the highlights that we did see for 2020, while it's tough to discuss highlights in a year such as that, we were able to increase the recreation fund balance of just over $500,000. We've begun a pool pack preventative maintenance program, which should definitely help us over time in stretching out the life expectancy of those two very key pieces of equipment in the building. We were able to strip the fitness floor, refinish it, paint the walls, and do a deep cleaning of all the equipment. And some of the other stuff that we were able to do was shifting our equipment to give us an opportunity to ensure some of our social distancing protocols. And we took care of, you know, replacing some of the lights and sound barriers by cleaning and painting those. You know, one of the big highlights, I think, as a result of all this is you've never seen and since we've opened, a cleaner building and more of an emphasis on sanitation. And those things are hopefully things that will continue to be in place for years past this pandemic. Moving on, I wanted to share with you a few items as far as revenue comparison, some of our big revenue ticket items that we typically you know, are able to bring in, and some of the differences that you'll see from, you know, 2020 to hopefully 2021. The first one is our youth charges. We are starting to see more comfort with the virus, or maybe it's just people just tired of things and wanting to get back to normal, but we're starting to see an increase in some of our youth programs as far as participation. From the time of our closure until, you know, recently, we've seen a huge decrease in this area, but we are anticipating to bring back a little bit more money than we did in 2020 with this. You know, $2,400 is a drop in the bucket, and we're really hoping to increase that quite a bit. You know, on average, we typically bring in $160,000 a year. We're definitely aiming to try to bridge that gap a little bit more than what is shown on the screen, but just based off of current projections of what we've seen the last few months, this kind of looks like where we're going to be. As far as our adult charges, that's one area where we've definitely decreased, you know, our offerings quite a bit from an adult sports programming. You know, due to space issues and the social distancing and those type of things. So hopefully we'll start seeing more of an increase in what is projected in that area. Our rentals, it really depends on when rentals can reopen. You know, that's, you know, mandated by the state and the Ohio Department of Health. That's a big area for us as far as revenues is concerned on an annual basis. And hopefully, as we start seeing, you know, rentals and, you know, the state and the nation opening up, we can start bringing that revenue back up to what it normally is. Typically, on an annual basis, we're somewhere around the $75,000 range for that. So you can see that's a huge hit that we've taken, and we're anticipating, that continuing through this year. So moving on. The
Director
next,
Kemp?
yes,
Well, last year in 2020, when did we stop the rentals? Did we have rentals just through March?
so the rentals, obviously, we did have some. I would ask Miss Long, Mary, to cover that as far as how much longer we went with the rentals, because I didn't start really until September.
Okay,
And we had a very small period of time where we did do some rentals. I believe mid-August through about mid-November of last year.
okay,
There were not a lot. People were still very uncertain about doing them.
perfect. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
welcome.
All right. So a couple other expense items that I wanted to show you, one of which was the operating supplies. This one, we're going to see a significant increase in this, and that basically boils down to keeping things clean and sanitized. Our custodial supplies, our wipes for the fitness floor, those type of things are things that we haven't really had a need to spend as much money on in the past as we do now and moving forward. So you're going to see a huge increase in that area, especially as technology increases and different kind of sanitation items and supplies. The price is going to increase for that, and the volume that we need to make sure this place continues to remain clean and safe. So that's going to be one of the huge increases. Playground supplies. What this basically in our playground supplies is mostly some of our park maintenance things are all lumped into this. So all of our ball field maintenance supplies, so drying agent, chalk, paint, those type of things, as far, and things for the playgrounds, the mulch, the items to maintain them. So all that's going to increase projected this year, and mainly due to our planned increase in summer baseball and the use of our fields this summer. Last year, you saw only a smattering of what we could typically do out at the ball fields with some of our travel leagues playing. None of our recreational programs played, and many leagues and programs that we rent the fields out to were also canceled or postponed. So there wasn't as much use of Vulcan Park. So a significant increase in that area, mainly due to the planned increase for summer programming that's going to be out there. Next up.
Director Kemp, if I may.
Yes, please.
Could we go back one slide? We had talked about the 2021 revenue comparisons, and we didn't get to the membership fees or Silver Sneakers program.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Yeah, that one's, Liz, can you go up a couple of slides?
You're there, Liz.
Oh, there we are. Perfect. Okay. So membership fees, this was a big one. Typically, we are on an annual basis right around a steady $450,000 a year in our membership fees that we collect. In 2020, that number dipped significantly to $202,000. We are hoping for a little bit of a rebound, but still with the the unknown out there with this virus and the pandemic, it's tough to really project things. Usually in January, we have a pretty good idea of what our yearly revenues are going to be for memberships. This gives us a good idea because many people are buying those memberships in January, start their New Year's resolutions off, and then this will give us kind of a baseline for what to expect for the year. Well, as part of our closure, we had to take that 3 months that we were closed and add that on to the end of their memberships to extend those to give our members a full value of their membership. What this is going to do for us is not really going to give us a great picture of what our membership totals may be until, March or April. So we're really hoping to see what that looks like to give us a better picture. But this is kind of where we're projecting things for the year. One of the great things that we're seeing right now is every day and every week our admissions are increasing. So we're getting more people back in here. We're getting more people purchasing memberships than we have since we started reopening back in June. So we're hoping that as we move forward, this number will definitely increase and close the gap between what we've projected in that typical $450,000 that we do get. As far as the silver sneakers go, this is really just based on our actual numbers for the past 3 months and projected throughout the year. We've seen a significant decrease in our ability to offer, safe programs. We did start them back up, then we put them on pause, then we're starting them back up again. But it is really just 1/3 of the programming that we've done on an annual basis as far as silver sneaker classes are concerned. Great thing is we're still seeing our silver sneakers coming into the building and utilizing the space. So we are still seeing revenues coming in, but we are projecting a decrease as we're able to open things back up and offer more programming and offer more classes. Hopefully we'll be able to see an increase in that. We typically bring in about $130,000 to $150,000 annually on this pre-pandemic. So we're hoping that we can, bridge that gap a little bit more. We're also looking at other ways to increase programming, trying to make this more of a wellness, overall body wellness, health wellness, mindfulness aspect of things. And we're working with our senior center on that, of bringing in some non-traditional programming that isn't so focused on the body, but maybe on the mind and the overall wellness, to give people another opportunity to participate in our programs and more revenue opportunities there. Thanks for bringing that up. So the next slide, we did cover some of these expenses, operating supplies and playgrounds. So we can move on to the next one here. Some of our other significant changes that you're going to see in expenses as compared to previous years are training and education. One of the things that I think with training and education is professional development is key. Overall, our members and residents are going to ultimately benefit from the training and expertise of our staff, and a well-educated staff. So we're looking at trying to send a couple folks to a conference, get some certifications lined up. But it's a great way for us as a department and as a city to network, see best practices that are out there, benchmark where we're at, and hopefully at the end of the day, and it will happen, our members and our residents are going to be the ones that benefit the most from these educational opportunities. Aquatics, that's going to increase significantly as more people come in and start using the pools. The cost of chemicals increase. So those are some things. And then as far as some of our expenses go in there as well, some of our equipment is, old and original, comes with being an old building. So we are looking at purchasing some things, and I'll cover some of those costs here shortly. Is equipment kind of along the same lines. We have an aging building, and we have aging equipment, and we are looking at doing a equipment lease on an annual basis to try to bring in fresh and new equipment. And we're hoping, this increase in expenditures here will hopefully, increase our revenues and memberships in some aspect. When we have the newest, freshest equipment, and we are showing that we have the ability to get onto the trends and bringing in the best equipment, hopefully that will, our residents will see this as an opportunity to want to come in more and use some of this new equipment, and hopefully that will increase our membership. So we'll see something, you know, a cause and effect hopefully with that.
Director
The
Knapp? Wait,
ex-
the
sorry.
the aquatics, is that number, the diamond, pool?
No, so that will cover here in a little bit. That's more in the building improvements
Okay,
aspect. The aquatic side of things is mostly like your chemicals and operations side of stuff. Yeah, you'll see a much bigger number for the Diamond Bright when we get to that.
all right.
Moving on, I think it's a good thing to show kind of some of our maintenance costs that we incur throughout the year and what that looks like. So, you know, with the aging building that we have, you'll see how much we spend on some of the different maintenance aspects of things. So alarm system repairs, our HVAC, which is a significant expense, some of our carryover from the pool from last year. Our 2020 total for building maintenance was at $87,000 or just over 87,000. As far as our 2021 total, we're looking at spending just over $124,000. And that's, you know, due to us being open more and the aging equipment that we have and aging, you know, building that we have. It is an increase of 36,000. And, you know, most of that is due to the fact that we'll be open more and we'll need a larger emphasis on these type of maintenance projects that are here. But the great thing about this as well, and is there's going to be more of an emphasis than ever on preventative maintenance between contracts with Smith and Obie and Brewer and Garrett to take care of some of our big items, HVAC, pool pack, those type of things. We're going to be taking an aggressive approach on preventive maintenance, something that, you know, quite frankly, we need to be doing on an annual basis. And moving forward, that's our hope, is to continue to maximize the value of all the equipment and everything that we have here in the building to get the best longevity and end of life, or, you know, lifespan out of it. And preventative maintenance, as you all know, is a huge component of that. All right, moving on to some of the fun stuff next. And this is the fun things to me, is the big projects to really enhance the experience for our members and our residents and, you know, all of our patrons and users. But unfortunately, with a lot of these comes the huge ticket costs. So these are some of the capital projects that we're looking for this year. The first one that I'll share with you is the Morton tennis courts. And I know we have some avid tennis players amongst the group here. But we are, our courts are, you know, offline towards the end of the playing season. We have some significant cracking and some issues with the structure. So we are looking at, you know, getting as much of a full redo here as we can. You know, new courts. One of the things that I'm really excited about is when we put the specs and the bid process together, is we're looking at adding or repurposing one or two of these courts for pickleball as well, to really take advantage of one of the huge trends in outdoor recreation, and recreation period is pickleball. So we have 6 courts currently. We're looking at redoing these and adding or repurposing a couple of pickleball courts in there as well. Trying to be mindful of time here. Moving on to the next one.
Quick question, I'm sorry.
Yes.
What is the estimated lifespan of an upgraded tennis court? You know, I mean, if we do this $200,000, is that every 5 year, every 20 year, when would we have to do this again?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'll look into that a little bit more. It varies, you know, especially when you look at Northeast Ohio, the weather being so unpredictable, these courts take a beating, and the season for playing on them is so short. So we're hoping to get as much time out of these as possible. But I'll research a definite total expectancy on that and get back to you on that.
Those tennis courts, I don't know if those things have ever been touched. They were in the same condition my whole life growing up. I grew up down the street, and yeah, I could understand the need for the improvement, because I think they're in the same condition today as they were when I was in high school.
Are you a tennis player, Greg?
I was not a tennis player, but I used to hang around Morton Park.
Okay, but one of the things, you know, that Carrie mentioned is the preventative maintenance. So once this improvement is done, we're going to be looking at preventative maintenance measures going forward to extend its life expectancy as well. So, you know, I know, you know, with concrete, you know, you can annually apply apply things to that to extend the life. So that's something that when we're talking to the contractors, you know, that we'll explore, you know, to again extend the life. There was a lot of interest in tennis this past year due to the pandemic. We were contacted by a lot of people about using it. Obviously, we had some concerns for safety. Our agreement with the schools. This is the home tennis. These are the home tennis courts for the Fairview Park, Fairview High School girls tennis team. You know, concerned about their safety. And as Carrie mentioned, pickleball is a really, really popular activity now. And, you know, and you talk to people, and it's one of those games that people of all ages can play. So, you know, it's a big number, of course, but hopefully we can whittle that down. You know, I talked to Carrie about, you know, are there some things that we maybe don't need to upgrade there that, you know, perhaps fencing, other things, you know, I don't know if there's drainage issues that we can maybe do to help with it. But, you know, it's a good question, Councilwoman Waring, about the life expectancy, but whatever it is, we're going to look at ways to extend it as long as we can. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Next project that we're looking at is one of those that was deferred, and I know you can't really, these are showing up unclear on my screen right now, but you can still see the wear and tear from the Diamond Bright project that needs to be done in the leisure pool. We're down to the concrete in some of the areas. You'll notice if you're in the pool, there's a sand buildup. Sometimes that feels almost like a minor, you know, gravel, if you will. But it's destroying our vacuum. So getting this taken care of takes care of other expenses and takes care of the member experience. We want our members to have the best experience possible here, and walking on a rough surface in a leisure pool is not something that, to me, is a very positive member experience. So hopefully by getting this work done and then moving on to the competition pool and taking care of the Diamond Bright with that, that'll increase that membership experience.
And Director Kemp, what is the timeline on this? Are we looking at a shutdown, or are we going to use the annual shutdown for this?
My hope is to use the annual shutdown for this, so that way we aren't infringing on the opportunity to keep things open. So what I want to do is, if we're able to move forward with this, once approved, we'll start moving into the spec and bid process, and hopefully the timeline that we can get set is to have this done at the end of the summer, leading into September, our annual shutdown time.
Madam Chair, if I can add something, please. Thank you. And, you know, depending on, you know, the feedback we have from council today, what we, you know, with that in mind, we were thinking about introducing some legislation here with respect to Morton tennis courts and the Diamond Bright, to get that bid process going so that we can time it as quickly as we can to get that work done. So we can talk obviously a little more about that, but if that's something council is amenable to, you know, we would like to get that legislation up to you as soon as we can to get, have you consider it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Cooney. Next slide, please. It shows the Vulcan Park connector path. This is just part of a grant that we have started the process with that, and it has been approved by you all. Thank you. The expenditure is going to come out in 2021, and this is to extend the walking path around Vulcan Park to connect the entire park. So just a couple of the pictures shows kind of where that is going to be going, coming off of that Diamond 5 and really extending where that path goes, connecting it to the parking lot and making it more accessible as we see, more people utilizing the parks and outdoor space. We want to make that park, more accessible to everyone that's out there.
I have a quick question on this one.
Yes.
Yes.
Is it, because at one point there was an option A and an option B for whether it was going to be a path by the park or the playground area versus connecting the back diamond in the parking lot. Is it for sure going to be connecting the back diamond to the parking lot?
Yeah, so this one is for sure going to be doing that. We already have some playground areas and paths around the playground that connect to the parking lot existing right now. This is going to be kind of ending that, or kind of, I guess, full circle, if you will, on getting the path connecting the parking lot and giving people the opportunity to get out to Diamond 5 and to watch soccer, depending on where they park, and not have to walk through the grass and the wet grass on a Saturday morning. And
it gets very wet back there.
Yeah. So this will hopefully help with just that overall accessibility and give people more space to walk out there and a chance to really lengthen people's walks as well.
Okay, thank you.
And this was submitted to the county. We have not heard back from them. So this is what we've proposed. This is the project that's been proposed to the county. And we're, optimistic that it'll be funded. Monica's always did a great job, and, we're just waiting to hear back from the county. But this was the proposal as opposed to the connector by the playground.
Thank you.
There's a sidewalk from your backyard, Greg.
Yeah, I know. Almost.
All right. The next one is our cardio equipment lease. For those of you that are up in our fitness floor, you'll notice we have a lot of aging equipment and a lot of maintenance issues that come with that equipment. The unfortunate out of order signs that are typically on some of our equipment. And we're hoping to address this in a couple of different ways. One of which is, the purchase of the lease of new equipment. With that comes service contracts and the maintenance that comes with a lease. And then the other aspect of things is the full-time position that we're going to be filling here soon for a building maintenance repair specialist. So a couple of things to address that, but the cardio equipment lease on an annual basis, we'll be looking somewhere in the $36,000 range. And that number may come down a little bit as well, as we, look at the social distancing and how long that might need to take place for, the comfort of our members. And, we have all of our equipment spaced out, which then of course means less equipment. So that number expense may come down a little bit, but we're planning on a $36,000 annual equipment lease, which will hopefully take away from some of our maintenance costs and whatnot as well. And like I said, it might attribute to a larger membership number coming in as well. Next up, the Tri-City Park tennis court upgrades. It's part of the annual 3-way project that we share with Westlake and Rocky River. Don't have the best of picture here other than an aerial shot that you could see. Courts 5 and 6 are very much discolored from the rest of the facility. They are the next to be upgraded. So the $28,000 is going to be coming into that. That's around $100,000 project total. And it will be split up between 4 different entities. the 3 cities, and then the Rocky River School District, who uses those courts as their home facility. So that's one of the bigger upgrades that'll be taking place there. And then the next one is just showing you some of the things that have already happened with Thomas Lane Park. And that, of course, is a grant, and that $50,000 expense will be coming out of the 2021 budget. And then moving on to the next one, some of our other projects, more so on top of the aquatic type things, and our pool controllers. You'll see the one white controller in there is where we're trying to get all of our controllers to. So we're going to be replacing the black controllers over time, just from a the white controllers actually do the work that we need them to do, keep the motors running, all of those things, and it's more updated technology. So we're looking at annually replacing some of those controllers. I couldn't find any great pictures of our awesome umbrellas yet, but as you can imagine, we have original umbrellas from when things opened up and they aren't opening all the way, or they're being chewed up by mice, or some of the other things going on. So we're hoping to get new umbrellas for the shade structures throughout our splash pads. And then the other one, the picture is not showing up very well, but our lane lines are original to the building, and we need to upgrade those. We're starting to see those fall apart, and you'll find pieces floating around in the pool from time to time as they break away from the lane lines. So we're just looking to update that old piece of equipment there. The last one here that I wanted to show you was our wave room wall repair. And this picture might be kind of tough to see, but towards the base of the wall, the tile you can see is crumbling in. And that was as a result of the roof leaks that took place in 2019. And the repairs that went with that. We need to get this room back in rentable order and get the work done on that. This is one of our revenue generating spaces. This is where we do birthday parties and different groups like that. So we're hoping to get this repaired soon so we can start hopefully opening rentals back up when we're allowed to do that. The last couple slides that I wanted to show you in my last couple minutes here are the kind of projections on a 3-year capital improvement plan. And we've started kind of identifying things out for the next several years of high costs. And this, I know, is going to look very aggressive, and it's going to be very much dependent on our revenues and as those start climbing. But we are hoping to really start planning for the future and getting an idea of what some of those future expenses might be moving forward into next year and the next few years. A lot of those things are things that you all know very well, have been either put off, or they're just part of the aging building and aging infrastructure that we have in recreation in our parks. A lot of them are issues with the pool and the system upgrades that need to go in place with our aquatic center to keep that running. Pools can be a very expensive venture, and there are a lot of things that we really need to focus on. And you'll notice a lot of these capital items are pool related, but some of these other ones we're just like our Morton tennis courts, our Bolkin basketball courts, and our Morton basketball courts need the attention. Our timing systems for our pool and swim meets, some of our doors need to be replaced in the pool. And then a lot of the other things are mostly, just thinking about, that preventative maintenance moving forward and taking care of some of these things that unfortunately have been neglected. And some of those are, the finishing of our courts and making those look shiny and new and continuing the preventative maintenance on them. Same with our studios and the flooring in those. So the next page will show kind of where we're at with some of the the 2023 thoughts, and then some with the 2024 thoughts following that. The play feature for the pool, and then the cardio equipment, but a lot of pool things that need to be looked into as far as being replaced and upgraded, and trying to get on a plan where we're replacing a couple of pumps a year and a couple of motors a year. We have 12 pool pumps that operate our 2 spaces and our splash pad. Each pool pump has a life expectancy of 6 to 7 years. So trying to get on a schedule where we're replacing 2 pumps a year instead of replacing 12 pumps 1 year, to try to get those costs in line and more of a replacement plan to maximize the value of our budget and money. The 2024 plan, a lot of the same type of expenditures, looking at the cardio equipment, pool things, trying to take care of some of the pumps and the motors. One of the big ones that I'd like to address, and could probably mostly be addressed with a grant, or in part with a grant, is our Bulkin playground. As our flagship park at Bulkin, that playground is outdated and could really use some newness to it, so, a fresh look, and it's our most used park. So that's kind of the next playground that I have identified as something that needs to be addressed. And so that's the big ticket item in here. But in all of these years, I'm looking at roughly around $350,000 a year, just to try to give us a baseline of what to expect on an annual basis. And while it is very aggressive, hopefully as our revenues start climbing back to normal, and even increasing and looking ahead to where we can add more revenue, hopefully that'll help this capital plan. The very last slide that I have for you is just some of the couple bigger ticket things that we really need to start thinking about moving forward. And hopefully with the preventative maintenance plan that is in place, and being able to extend that due to that preventative maintenance, it's not something that needs to be done in these next couple of years, hopefully, but these are some big ticket items that we need to keep in mind moving forward, that at some point we are going to have to upgrade and get new pool packs in play for our 2 pools to run at maximum, so just some things to really start looking forward to. That is all I have for you. I know it's right at 9 o'clock now, and I didn't leave you much time for questions, but
No, I have a couple questions for you. Especially for the tennis courts and the pools, are we receiving money from the school system since they use those things?
No, as part of the Gemini agreement that was, signed long ago, we do not see any charges from them. There will be a time, I believe, and I think this is something that Greg or Mary might be able to answer a little bit better, but currently, as of now, we are not. But as far as a priority goes, they do have, the top priority over the use of these spaces, just to give you a better idea on the picture of what it looks like from being able to generate revenue and those type of things. But being, great partners that we are with the school district, that we're not seeing those costs right now.
Okay. And then didn't we pass an ordinance at the end of last year approving a new timing system for the rec center for the competitive pool?
So that timing system ordinance that we put through the Board of Controls, that was just to upgrade the equipment that we have right now. Over time, we're going to need to see new equipment, because technology advancements. This is basically to put Band-Aids and duct tape on the existing equipment that we do have right now.
Okay. And then I have a question about the line items. We have a concession stand for concession stand, you put like $2,000 in your budget for it, but then you were showing possibly zero income coming from the concession stands.
Yeah, so a lot of that has to do with inspections and whatnot, but we're not sure if we're going to be able to open the concession stands yet.
Okay.
You know, they're an issue when it comes to the, you know, the pandemic and the virus and having people congregating around those spaces. So we're not really sure how that's going to look yet, but the $2,000 is mainly for inspections and upgrades because they haven't been touched in a couple of years. And we need to, you know, get ready for that time to where we are able to start opening that concession stand back up.
Is that at Vulcan or is that also at the football field?
For the inspections and the fees, it's for both Vulcan and the football stadium. So yeah, there's, you know, the inspections, the certificates, those type of things should be covered in both of those.
Okay. And then also I was wondering what the special service line is in the budget for 28,000. I can't read it. 868.44. What are some things that goes into that? I'm looking on page 29 of 69.
So some of the special services might be some of those, you know, contracts that we have with other, like right now, our field turf out at the stadium, we're trying to figure out where to put that, the special services. So those type of things. But I think I'm going to have Mary answer that one because I'm still, you know, pretty new in learning this process right now myself. So.
The largest piece of that expenditure in 2020 was our contract with Tri-City Park. And that looks to me like we are also carrying that right over into the 2021 appropriations, which is that $28,000. The rest of that is a very small piece. For example, some of the permits that Carrie talked about, things like when we have licenses and things that we need to do in the building, some of those things go through there.
Okay, great.
Thank
I
you,
also
Mary.
have-
Yeah,
Oh, one last question. Safety town registration, obviously we didn't host that in 2020, so there's a $0 revenue there. But there's been, you know, 6,000, 7,000, 9,000 in previous years. You're showing a $5,000 estimated revenue for 2021. But I've seen that we're looking at registering all of last year's kids if they're interested who missed out, and all of this year's kids. Do you really foresee that that's going to still be lower based on the virus or based on what criteria?
Well, so with all of our programming, there's really kind of an unknown of how many people will be signing up for these programs. We've seen anywhere from 25% to 50% coming back and participating in programs that they didn't participate or that were closed or canceled last year. So it's still an unknown. The other thing that we've done with our planning, while yes, we have planned a first grade safety town and we have planned these kindergarten safety town sessions, those numbers that we're planning for these are going to be reduced for safety. So we can't bring in the same amount of people in each session that we did in previous years due to social distancing, due to equipment, due to physical space, due to staffing issues, those type of things. So that number could come down. We're hoping to bridge that gap a little bit more like I talked about earlier and getting closer to what we normally have, but just projecting based off of, you know, reduced numbers in programs and people's comfortability in coming back. That's why we chose that number and projected that number.
I think too, as you know, Finance Director Single talked about earlier, I think we want to be really conservative on our revenues. And then as you know, as potentially, hopefully things will grow and grow beyond that, then we'll just be in a better position in the long run.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for your time.
I have another question.
Oh, yes.
We had talked about before possibly doing some sponsorships or other things to bring revenue in. And I was wondering if you can update us on that.
Yeah, so it's something that we've talked about in our commission meetings. And it's something that we need to get a plan put in place for, and it's going to be part of that overall like financial plan that we had discussed in committee that one night, where we're looking at all the opportunities we have when it comes to sponsorships, our programs, our fees, those type of things, and really looking at what that may look like. Sponsorships right now, you know, your little program sponsors and your team sponsors are going to be pretty tough to come by with, you know, the pandemic and the mom and pop shops. But an overall plan will be put into place, and we are going to look at moving forward with some of that.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions for Director Kemp or Mary?
No question, just a comment, Carrie. I want to appreciate everything you and Mary and the rest of the staff. I'm getting a lot of good feedback from people. And so you better extend an appreciation to Chief Shepherd here for running over 10 minutes so he doesn't throw you in jail.
Thank you, Greg.
So Director Kemp, moving forward, I would like to invite you guys to give us updates, and maybe like the June 14th of September 20th committee meetings, and you could just kind of give us brief just updates on where we are with things.
Yes, thanks for identifying those dates for me as well. What we are looking to do, and the mayor alluded to it earlier, is we are looking to provide quarterly, you know, statements, or not so much statements, but just reports of where we are with, you know, our finances, expenditures, numbers of people coming in, projections, those type of things. So we've already set up a template for you all, and we're starting to fill in those numbers. Perfect. And we plan on communicating that information with you quarterly at the least.
Perfect. Great. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Mary.
All right. Have a good day, everyone.
You
Yeah.
too.
Too.
All right. Next up, the police. Chief Shepherd, it's all you.
Good morning. Before I start, I think Mayor Cooney would like to say some things.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just, Paul, Chief Shepherd started in October. Yeah, he's been very busy since then. I appreciate all his efforts on behalf of his department and the residents. As you know, we're going to have 3 new hires starting on Monday. We're very excited about that. A lot of energy with these new hires. I think most of the stuff that the chief's going to talk to you about is pretty straightforward with respect to personnel, as Greg alluded to earlier, the cost. But the thing that I think will dominate the conversation today is the proposal to move our jail and dispatch services from Fairview Park to North Olmsted. This is something that the chief has spent a lot of time researching, and he and I have talked about it extensively. We feel it's in the best interest of the citizens here. It's going to provide another officer on the road. You have your most senior officer on a shift answering 911 calls. I think we could make better use of those officers' time and serving the residents. The jail is it's outdated. We've been, it takes a lot of time because of the way it's set up for our officers to attend to prisoners. There's been a lot of problems in Cuyahoga County with how they've managed their jail. Quite frankly, it's an abomination how they've handled it down there. And as a result of the problems that they have down there, there's been increased inspections and requirements for all the other jails here in Ohio, and that's fine. I mean, we have a job. When we have prisoners, we need to take care of those prisoners. We have an obligation to keep them safe. I totally understand that. But the way our jail is set up, it's antiquated, and it's, and it could just become a bigger expense going forward. In the past, the jail inspectors were, I believe the chief can correct me, I think they were regional, or there certainly weren't that many. Now, in light of all the problems that are going on, again, specifically with respect to Cuyahoga County, there's one jail inspector here in Cuyahoga County. That person, is spending more time looking at all the facilities here in the county. And again, we have an obligation to keep those people safe. But when you have a jail that was built in 1967 and the standards that were in place at that time, it's really hard to come up, to meet the standards of today, and quite frankly, costly. The cost that the chief has in the memo that he shared with you really relates to, I think, things that are critical that have to be done from a safety standpoint for the prisoners and for the officers. But if we were to get into other repairs, they would be much more expensive. And, with the infrastructure of our building, it just could be a trouble. We saw that with the challenges that we face with the locker room project. That worked out very well, and I'm happy for prior council's approval and getting that project through. It was something that our officers, was long overdue to them. But we experienced some challenges in doing that just because of the age of the building and today's technology and things that how it could be set up. So that was a pretty good precursor of the issues that if we do get into extensive jail repairs, what we'd be dealing with. So, I appreciate Chief Shepard's time. He's done a lot of research on this, and I'm sure he'd be happy to share that with you going forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. First, I want to thank you all for taking the time to talk to me today and give me an opportunity to share our plan as to how we can move our department forward. First of all, Liz, if I could trouble you to pull up the PowerPoint, please. Thank you. So, like I'm sure you'll hear repeatedly, COVID had a major effect on our agency last year. The way it affected us, who would have thought that we'd be wearing masks and gloves almost every call we would go on, sanitizing our cars, just checking temperatures of everybody who came into our building. Obviously, the other thing that affected our agency was the shutdown that we had because of the quarantine and the stay-at-home order. That also limited our contact with people. And while last year, all of our minor crimes were down, like traffic offenses, things like that, because people stayed at home, and our shoplifting charges were, arrests were down because the stores were closed. Our major crimes stayed near the same. Our assaults, our arsons, our serious burglaries, auto thefts, they stayed relatively same to previous years. Liz, if you could go to the second slide, please. Okay, it just states our mission. Our mission for every member of the department is to consistently seek and find ways to friendly promote, preserve, and deliver a feeling of security, safety, quality of services to members of our community. We do that in many ways. We have many programs, whether it be this year, for instance, for COVID that we've never done before, birthday parades where our cruisers will go and drive by children's birthday parties and make sure that they're recognized. So again, we adapted how we do our mission with what our situation is. You can go to the third slide, please. Thank you. Just an idea of how COVID affected us. On January 1 of 2020, we had 27 sworn officers. We had 2 clerks, 22 auxiliaries officers, and 13 school guards. We had anticipated the retirement of Detective Mark Miller and Chief Eric Upperman. Mark retired in August. Chief Upperman retired in October. We had plans to have a entrance exam to hire new officers to replace him. With COVID, we were unable to do that. So when those 2 officers retired, we had to absorb them until we could get help. And as Mayor Cooney alluded, Monday we are swearing in 3 new officers. We're very excited about that. But because of the COVID and because of our inability to bring in replacements, our detective bureau went from 2 detectives to 1 detective, and he was burdened with investigating all the crimes that our patrol could not handle. We are at bare minimums on the road right now. We had obviously 8 officers come down with COVID and had to be quarantined. On a good note, we had 2 officers actually since October. We've had 3 officers who had babies, so they were out for a period of time. On February 2nd, February 6th, Lieutenant John Martin, a veteran of over 34 years, retired. So now we're down to 24 officers. So on behalf of the department and the rest of the officers here, I want to thank council and the mayor for making us able to bring those 3 officers on to bring us back up to staffing. So if you can go to the next slide, please, Liz. Okay, before we get to the jail and dispatch, I just want to touch on some of the larger budget items that we're going to ask for, and then we'll get to jail and dispatch because that's going to be the biggest. Every other year in 2019, we purchased 3 new police cars. This year, we're asking for 3 new cruisers. They're replacing 1 8-year-old car with over 107,000 miles and 2 6-year-old cars. One that has over almost 125,000 miles, and the other is just approaching 100,000 miles. 2 of the cruisers will be taken out of the 260 fund. 1 of the cruisers will be purchased out of the POPIS fund. Just to let you know. Another cost that you'll see that we had a bump up in is last year, because of COVID, we held off on purchasing updates in our IT. Some things are mandated by the state of Ohio. For instance, we need to buy a new, update our program. Whenever we take an accident report, we have to provide a sketch on that accident report, and it has to be computer generated. Our old program's almost 7 years old. We need to update it. There's a charge there. In order for us to use our leads computer system in our car, our MDTs, we have to have we have to have antivirus. It's time we have to renew that subscription. That expires in July of 2021. And also new to this year is a second way of authentication. Usually when we log in, there's a password. Now we're required to have a PIN number sent to us, and there's a cost for that. That was included in our computer lease. So that's the increase in there. There has been a bump in our training budget. As we took promotional tests and we reviewed our policies and procedures, it became pretty obvious that they were badly in need of review and updating. We're looking at different ways to do that, to increase accountability to for our officers and to the public. And we are going to go with a company called Lexipol. We reached out to the chiefs of Westlake, all the web communities, Westlake, River, Bay, North Olmsted, and Lakewood, and they wholeheartedly endorse Lexipol. They have the best practices. They're able to integrate our Fairview specific practices into their state of Ohio and best practices. And then more importantly, whenever there is a decision by the Supreme Court or something that has to be updated that is a best practice, they will automatically notify and review us. So there is a fee for that. But every month, our officers will be tested on those policies. They'll be asked to review some policies. So it'll keep our officers' knowledge of our policies and procedures current and fresh. And more importantly, we'll be using stuff that is proper and stuff that maybe is outdated from 30 years ago that we now do currently that we did differently back then. Any questions about those before we move on to the jail and dispatch? No? Okay, thank you. Okay, so before prior to becoming chief, I rode with our officers, our rank and file, each one at a time, and through my own observations, I asked them, what could we do to improve our department? Couple things. First, we transitioned from an 8-hour shift per shift to a 12-hour shift per shift schedule early January of last year. We're going to continue that. Our department was structured for the old 8-hour shift format. One of the things that was brought to my attention, and I agreed, was that our officers, our road officers, really didn't like the fact that our supervisors had to sit the desk where when they were needed on the road, they would not be able to come down and answer questions, or they would have to call into dispatch, consult with the supervisor, and many times it'd be a lot easier to relay what was going on to the supervisor if they were down there, as opposed to having to translate it multiple times so the supervisor understood what was going on. Because of the new format, we got rid of a lieutenant's position and created a sergeant position, so that all the shifts are evenly supervised the same way. And right now, the feeling is that it would be better served if the supervisor could be on the road. The other thing that was brought up was the jail, and our jail, our station. It's a beautiful building. It was built in 1967. As the technology for 1967, as we've gone along, we've done everything we can to fit it in there and put everything the way it should be. But unfortunately, it's got to the point where to maintain current jail standards, it's something that we need to sit down, because it's going to come at a great deal of cost. Not to mention the fact that we have officers, sworn officers, who are taken off the road to work the jail, and I'll cover that a little more. Our jail is a 12-day facility, which means that in some cases, people can be sentenced for 12 days. They'll stay in our custody for 12 days. Or say we arrest somebody on a felony charge, or for investigative hold, or anything, or maybe a probation violation where they're waiting to be sentenced. We'll hold people up to 12 days. So that means for up to 12 days, somebody will be in our facility 24 hours a day. They have to be fed. They have to be showered. Their medical issues have to be taken care of. We make sure that if they have their hygiene issues are taken care of. So we don't have special staff handling it. That means we pull an officer off the road to come and address that. So Liz, if you could go to the next slide, please. This is just some pictures of our jail. You'll see on the left-hand side, you'll see a photograph of the entrance to our booking area, and you'll see a shower that all the prisoners use. Whenever the prisoner is using a shower, an officer has to stand by and monitor them. And if we have multiple prisoners, male and female, that means an average shower takes about 15-20 minutes. That means those officers are off the road watching while the prisoners shower, change their clothes, things like that. Showers are offered daily. For every 24 hours somebody's in there, we have to offer a shower. So every day a prisoner's in there, we have to take an officer off the street between 15 minutes and 30 minutes just to watch the prisoner shower. And again, add the prisoner, that's more time they're off the road. The photograph to the right is an entranceway to our to our cell area. And Liz, if you could go to the next slide, please. Just bring it down just a little bit. Thank you. Okay, so our jail has stayed relatively the same since 1967. Metal bars, metal bunks, no lights, exterior lighting. Everything is inside. Essentially, we have no TV back there. Essentially, it's like solitary confinement. They do have the opportunity. We do have games for them to play, cards. They're allowed to have books, but basically, when they're in that cell area, it's a very tight, and it's a very lonely place. If you could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So as you can see, it's stainless, everything's stainless steel for security reasons. You see the bars, the cells by the old standards. We are good for the old standards, but by the new standards, our cells need to be doubled in size. Also, we need to put tables and a place for them to sit, which come at a cost around $8,000 per area. So if we had to redo our cell area to meet modern standards, we would reduce our cell area. Liz, if you can go to the next slide, please. So on one side, or which we refer to as the male area, we have four cells. On the other side, we have the female area, which consists of 2 cells. If we had to change our jail to the current standard for cell area, our male side would be reduced to 2 cells. Oh, by the way, there's a significant cost because we'd have to tear all the old construction out and put new construction in. And then the female area, there would be only 1 cell. If you can go to the next slide, please. As I alluded to before, basically every 24 hours we hold a prisoner. Our officers are, by state rules and regulations, every once an hour an officer has to go in and check our prisoners. We have to feed them 3 times a day. So that, and our food's provided by Fairview Hospital. So we pull an officer off the road once an hour. That takes between 10 and 15 minutes. They go in, they check the prisoners, address whatever issues have to be gone. Then they go back on patrol. When we have meals, we go to the hospital. Our officers are off the road for about 30 minutes. It takes about 15 minutes to drive to the hospital, pick up the food, come back in, 15 minutes to feed them. So in an 8-hour day, or in a 24-hour day, 8 hours of our officer time is spent taking care of a prisoner. So, and just so you're clear, where we say we hold approximately 200 prisoners, we arrest between 500 and 700 prisoners a year. We don't, most of them we release them like a DUI or a first-time shoplifter. They're brought in, they're processed, which means we take their photographs, fingerprints, and then they're usually released on bond. Of those 500 to 700, we hold around 200 people for more than 6 to 8 hours, which means now that's where we hold them. So when we talk about long-term jail, we are looking at who's going to house those prisoners when they're with us for the extended period of time. So when you take the 200, when you take the 8 hours a day, and you multiply that by 200, that means 1,600 hours a year. We have an officer off the road doing nothing but taking care of prisoners. When you take their salary into account, that means we're paying $60,000, almost $61,000, just to have an officer do prisoner care. Liz, if you can go to the next one, please. So, when I give tours of the police department, I always say our station was, and I hope Councilman Minnick appreciates this, our station was state of the art in 1967 when it was built, and it's still state of the art for 1967. And what I mean by that is that when there were different standards when the jail was built, it was, you went to jail, they would feed people from either Kentucky Fried Chicken or McDonald's. Now, thankfully, prisoner care standards have advanced significantly. We have to provide healthy, wholesome meals. If somebody has an allergy, we have to abide by it. So if somebody has a fish allergy or a milk allergy, we have to get them special meals. Hence why we go to the hospital. So we have been able to adjust in that regard, and we've been able to adjust on our policy and procedure. What we haven't been able to adjust is the standards to make our jail as secure, and we're talking about the physical outlay of the jail. Some things we were able to do is add new lighting, but ultimately, if we were building a new jail or we made it sit there, we would have to put a sunlight in, drill a hole through the ceiling and put a sunlight in, because current state standards say that we have to have natural light in our jail, or in current jails. So some of the things in 2019, we were inspected by the Adult Detention Authority, and they found that we were insufficient in 21 standards. And then we asked for suggestions, or they offered what we needed to do to improve. And Liz, if you can go to the next slide, please. First thing they want is we have an elevator. When we arrest somebody, we bring our prisoners into the basement of our police station. We take them up the elevator for security purposes. They go straight into our jail. Currently, it's done by a key. Our officer has a key. We go up there. Again, it's been like that since 1967. However, current mandate says that we now have to make our elevator where it has to be controlled from the outside. If we have prisoners there for an extended period of time, then that means it's going to cost around $25,000 to put fobs and have the person working dispatch operate the jail elevator up and down. So we're going to be that's a cost that we would have to do to bring our one thing we have to bring up to code. If you can go to the next slide, please, Liz. All our exterior doors are with a special key, and our officers, when we go into the jail, we do not take any exterior jail keys in there. We are buzzed in and out. However, they now want fobs, electronic means, and so that no keys can be done, and all the doors can be controlled electronically, and that's a cost of an additional $5,600. So just in the elevator and the exterior doors, you're looking at almost $31,000, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Can you go to the next one, please? So when we started looking at this, originally started that we reached out to other departments to see if someone would be willing to take our prisoners. The cities all said they really weren't interested in doing our jail. They would do it at a cost, and I'll cover that in a little while. But a lot of cities, going back to the original thing about having the supervisors on the desk and getting more officers on the road, a lot of cities were interested in possibly taking over our dispatch along with our jail. So sat down, looked at our current dispatch situation. If you can go to the next slide, please. So currently, as I said at the beginning, officer in charge, usually a sergeant, works a desk. That officer in charge is in charge of the whole shift. So in addition to answering phones, the radio, walk-in traffic, they are in charge of supervising the scenes or supervising the shift. And so our officer in charge is on the desk, is stuck at our station. We can't. So I'll give you an example. We had an incident where one of our officers was involved in an officer-involved shooting in 2008. the officer in charge had to wait for somebody to come sit the desk before they could respond to the scene to supervise the scene.
Wow.
So we are the last in all Cuyahoga County. We are the last police department that has police officers sitting the desk, answering the radios and the phones full time. There are some departments that have part-time dispatchers, and occasionally officers will sit the desk, do dispatch. But we are the only department in Cuyahoga County that currently has an officer sitting the desk. Can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, our current radio is our current dispatch room is over 35 years old. Our radio console was manufactured and installed in the mid to late 1980s. And as you can see, like we have patched stuff in. We had the old stuff, and as new technology came, we sort of just made it work. That's how we did it. Can you go to the next slide, please? So our dispatch console, can you raise it up a little bit? Thank you. So our dispatch console, again, built in the 1980s. If you look on the front, obviously is the face, the top. On the back, you see the 15,000 wires, and some of those are maybe equipment that was initially installed, and some that we've had to add after the fact. So it's a giant labyrinth of wires back there. We looked into replacing it because eventually a 35, 40-year-old piece of equipment is going to falter. To replace it is between $75,000 and $100,000 for modern technology. If you can go to the next slide, please. So this is our digital voice recorder. It records all our admin lines and our 911 lines. It was installed in 2010. In 2020, in November, we had that ice and windstorm. It caused a power surge. It knocked it out. We were able to get a company to come in and temporarily replace it. It's running on Windows XP, which is no longer being supported. And they said that if it broke again, it probably wouldn't be able to be repaired. And we got estimates to replace it, $13,000 to $17,000. Go to the next slide, please. So what does it cost to staff our dispatch? By us having a sergeant sit at the desk, and we could have a patrolman sit at the desk, so we change it, but just having an officer, it's usually a sergeant. We spend to have an officer sitting at the desk over $480,000 in salary just to have an officer sit at the desk. When that $480,000, or that more importantly, the officer can be better served out on the road taking care of our citizens. Next slide, please. So first, as I said, I started looking for people, other agencies that would take care of our prisoners. So the going rate right now is $125 a night. Cities like North Royalton, cities like Strongsville, they have newer state-of-the-art jails. However, it's $125 a night. Oh, by the way, we have to drive 15 to 20 miles to take our prisoners there. If you take that $125 a night and you multiply it by our annual 2,200 prisoners, it would come up to $25,000. Currently, we have a $15,000 budget, and that covers the expensive food, prisoner uniforms, miscellaneous things for the jail. Next slide, please. So we looked at who could possibly do our dispatch. So Cuyahoga County has multiple multi-agency dispatch centers. There's Chagrin Valley, there's Southwest, which is Strongsville, Hillcrest, which is the northeast side. Some of them you have to pay to get into the COG. The average cost just to get in is $250,000. And then annually, the fees are between $250,000 and $300,000, depend on your call volume. But they don't provide any jail service. So we could have somebody else dispatch us for us, but we still have the problem with the jail. If you go to the next slide, please. So we look local. What do our neighbors do? Right now, Rocky River is building a brand new police station, so they are forced to send their prisoners elsewhere. So they have contracted with Westlake and Rocky River. I'm sorry, Westlake and Bay Village. They pay $125 a day for them to house their prisoners. Rivers Department, Police Department's not done, and they are not ready to accept any additional agencies to dispatch. Can you go to the next one, please? So we again, talking to our neighbors, talked to North Olmsted. In 2016, North Olmsted completely renovated and remodeled their dispatch area. They expanded it in the hopes of getting another agency to come in with them. When we were talking, they have a correctional staff, so they actually have staff that takes care of prisoners. When we were talking to them, they offered to do our dispatch for $225,000 a year, and they would also hold our long-term prisoners for $65 a day, roughly half of the going rate. And more importantly, they're only 5 miles away. Unlike Royalton or Strongsville, if we drove out there, we're looking at a 10, 15 mile, 20 mile drive. Westlake's a little closer, and obviously Bay's a little farther. If you can go to the next slide, please. So just to give you an idea of the difference between the two dispatch centers. Again, that's our dispatch center on the left from 1980s. There's the new dispatch consoles for North Olmsted. They have the ability to raise the panel, the radios and computers up or down depending on the dispatcher. So if a dispatcher wants to stand, they can stand. They want to sit, they can sit. They have that technology. If you can also see, it's much more compact than what we have because, again, it's new. That next year they are planning to replace their entire radio system. They're going to spend about $180,000, and that cost would not be given. That's something they'd already budgeted for. We would benefit from the new radio system. If you could go to the next slide, please. So again, you see our 1980 dispatch center, and then you look at the new one, the new updated center in North Olmsted. Remember the back of the console with all the wires and everything? If you look at North Olmsted, it's all clean, all modern, but they invested that money 5 years ago, and they're reaping the benefits of it now. If we kept our dispatch, we're going to have to do the same for ours. It may not, obviously, I don't think we would end up with 2 consoles, but we'd have to purchase 1 console that would be similar to that.
Chief?
Yes, ma'am.
We don't do any kind of dispatch in conjunction with our fire department?
No, our fire department goes to Westcom. So there's a difference in police and there's a difference in fire dispatch. So with the fire dispatch, I know talking to Chief Raffin, they're very happy with Westcom, but they are strictly fire department oriented.
Okay.
So with the police dispatch, we have things like warrants, leads where we run computer checks when I run a license plate or I pull somebody over. So there's different, it's similar in that we dispatch people, tell people where to go, but the content is different. We ask different questions, we do different things.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
Chief, if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm just curious, you said that North Olmsted, when they built this whole thing, their new dispatch center, their intent was to, get other communities maybe to utilize it. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised we haven't looked at this, or have we in the past since it's been around for 5 years, with the numbers that you're citing, with regard to using, a sergeant to sit at desk at the cost of 480,000 and many of these other factors. I mean, none of this is surprising us. We've had a 1968 facility
Right.
for 54 years or whatever it is.
So it was always offered, but we, again, for different budgetary reasons or different, the way the department was structured, the fact that if we did it, you would have to change some people in the rank, and it basically, this is sort of like the perfect storm for us, that we have 2 lieutenants retiring, and if we went to dispatch, we would not replace 1 lieutenant. So we would just we would lose a body, but we would be gaining the equivalent of 4, because while that we on the admin side, we'd have to do a little less, we'd absorb it that way, but on the road side, having people out on the road bolstering our detective bureau, that's where the service to the citizens will improve by doing this. So I think it was just like the perfect storm of, you get the initial sticker shock. It would be a great deal of change. We were working 8-hour shifts. We'd have to restructure a department. And it's just because of the way our retirement schedules are, it's sort of like the right time to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Chief Shepherd,
Yes.
I have 2 questions. The first question is, the rate that North Olmsted is offering us right now, is that a 1 year, a 3 year, a 5 year? What is there a chance that will skyrocket in future years? And my second question is, how will this affect, when residents call in via the non-emergency line, maybe to get permission to park on the street or other services? Will we see a decrease in that service?
The initial proposal is 3 years with an option for 4 off the top of my head. So that rate would not change there. Could there be an increase down the road? Yeah, but I don't see it skyrocketing. Again, I'm sure there will be a bump to adjust for, like increase for dispatcher salaries, things like that. But I don't see a huge like, you're going to go up to $300,000. I don't see that. As far as the call for service, no, our phones would be answered by North Olmsted's dispatchers. They would answer as Fairview Park Police. They can they would have access to our computer, our dispatch system, our dispatch program. So they could enter tows, they can enter parking permission, they'll enter calls. And then if not, they have the ability to transfer phone calls here. Also, our clerical staff and admin will be here most of the time, Monday through Friday. So there shouldn't be any issue. On the next slide, I'll address our pros and cons. One of the things that there will be is at night, after like 9 o'clock until like 7 o'clock in the morning, and on weekends, you wouldn't have, when you walked in the station, they'd have to call an officer off the road to come talk to you. Other than that, that's the only change that you would see for our citizens. The benefits is you are going to get an extra officer on the ability to put another officer on the road. Could you go to the next slide, please? Did I answer your question, Councilwoman?
You did. Thank you very much.
Sure. So when we just put the numbers together, again, if you look at what we're paying right now to have a regular officer staff to jail, it's around $61,000. Again, it fluctuates with prisoners, but again, average about 200 prisoners stay for an extended period of time. We're looking at around $13,000 for prisoner care. And then having a officer sit the desk, you're looking at $481,000 to $225,000. So you see the difference, almost just over $300,000 difference in cost.
So real quick, just a side note too, when you're going into the rates per night, I am surprised. I didn't know what the rate was going to be. This is a fantastic rate. As you mentioned, some of the other places that do 125 suburbs, but county, they do $99. And so I would imagine that would typically be the lowest. So the fact that this is low is that much lower, I think this is an amazing, amazing rate. So I know, Chief, I'm in support of this. We've talked about it a number of times, and because I think it's going to be a huge win, not only for the city, for the inmates, for the employees. It's just a win across the board. And this came sooner than I was anticipating. I thought we were going to have to wait until Rocky River got done being built, but good job on getting it done ahead of time, earlier than anticipated. And I think it's great.
Thank you, Councilman. Liz, could you go to the next slide, please? Okay, just some things, just so the advantages, obviously, the ability to put more officers on the road, to bolster our detective bureau, so go from one detective with the dispatch change. I'll be able to put a supervisor directly in the bureau so that we are equal to all the other departments. Bay Village has a sergeant and 2 detectives, somebody directly supervising an extra detective, so that one officer is not dealing with the 200 to 300 major crimes that we deal with in a year. Have a supervisor actually be on the scene so that if our officers are doing well, he or she can say, hey, good job. Or if they need some instant correction, they can correct them as it's being done, as opposed to hearing after the fact that an officer may have done something that they could have done better, that they can fix it right away. Also, the liabilities of housing a prisoner. The people we hold for long-term, especially probation violations, usually people that have drug problems and other violent issues, and the fact that we are getting them where they're going to be constantly supervised as opposed to being unsupervised, if you understand what I'm saying. I mean, we still have somebody here, but with North Olmsted, they have a correctional staff. There'll be somebody there to monitor them almost the majority of the time, where we go in, check them, and then we leave, and then we come back and check them again. And then the cons, the things are, as I said, the station, there'll be times when our residents or people come in, they're going to have to push a button. They'll come in, and then an officer will be called off the station. So they may have to wait 5 minutes for an officer to come in, as opposed to someone greeting them at the window right away. And I'll do everything I can to minimize that. And then when we do transport prisoners to North Olmsted for the 5 mile trip, an officer will be out of the city when we are going to and from there. Next slide, please.
Chief, a big thing we're missing here.
Yeah.
We have a non-compliant jail facility.
Yes, that's true.
We've been very fortunate. There has not been a lawsuit filed against the city.
Well, I can say this is in my career, we have had two completed suicides in our jail, one in 1998, one in 2005. And since 2000, we've had an additional 9 more suicide attempts where we're able to prevent them from completing it. So we have been very fortunate. We do our best with, we do more with less, but it's time that we do what's best for the citizens and be more cost effective.
We've been doing our best for many years. Thank you, Chief.
And Chief, one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
North Olmsted, you'd mentioned their intent was to serve other communities.
Yes.
Is there anyone else currently with them? Are they serving another community?
No, they're not. Basically, about 10 years ago, Cuyahoga County made a concerted effort to consolidate dispatch centers, hence those large centers. There used to be every department just dispatch for themselves. The West Shore communities are one of the rare the COGs that we're actually the first ones to go to another dispatch center. So they're hoping that our partnership is a positive one, and we're going to do everything we can to make it happen. That if they see how well it works with us, that they'll pull somebody else in or other agencies in to show what a good job they do. Is
the new Rocky River facility planning on doing the same and enticing maybe Bay or?
Well, I can't speak for them. I can tell you that we had some talks, and I think their big thing right now is just getting their new facility open and see what's going on.
Right. No, this is a great idea. Thank you for presenting all these facts. And
thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it.
And who really knows when Rocky River opens, maybe we can negotiate rates.
Down the road, we can keep all our options open. But I think right now, North Olmsted is the best for us to move forward and see what we can do.
Thank
Chief
you.
Shepherd, just to make sure that I'm understanding this correctly and I'm not missing it.
Sure.
You mentioned that in terms of personnel, we would not be backfilling the lieutenant position, I believe is what you said. Is there a risk of anyone else losing their job over this?
No, so the reason we are not backfilling the lieutenant's position to help defer the cost of the jail. However, as I said, the benefit of this is we will lose roughly 2,080 hours of one officer, but we will be gaining the equivalent of 4. So we'll make up that one officer position, but an additional 3 more bodies, because we will not have to have someone sitting the desk 24 hours a day, 365. We basically freed up an officer per shift to be able to go on the road, attend more training, give us flexibility to address larger issues or issues that are more pressing, and to really expand what we already do and make it better.
Thank you. Our people are our strongest asset, and I want to make sure we're taking care of them. So I wanted to make sure I did not miss where maybe we wouldn't be. So I appreciate you verifying that.
Thank you, ma'am.
And last question, Chief, when would we hope to get this rolling?
With your approval, July 1st.
Okay, thank you.
Chief, you mentioned the possibility of 3 new cruisers this year. Is there
Yes,
any
ma'am.
other equipment, or do you have equipment expiring or anything else that would need replacing this year?
Well, I think I put in there, we do with us, we're gonna have to buy some computer like desktops for a couple desks. That's about $2,000. With those cruisers, included in the budget that will go from specialty funds like the Law Enforcement Trust Fund, we're gonna buy new dash cams for the cruisers. The two of the cruisers are were our original dash cam cars, and the cameras are 6 years old. They're starting to fail, so we're going to put new cameras in there. And from here on out, every time we get a new cruiser, I will make sure a dash cam is in there. And then I think if you read my cover sheet, I've reached out to the governor to do whatever we can to be eligible for the grant to get body cameras on our officers.
Yeah.
Our big cost that I can see, if everything works out next year and the following for next year, is we're going to have to replace our handguns. They're 10 years old. So that's something that'll come back to you next year. We will not need to buy cruisers because fortunately we do everything we can to keep our fleet going as best we can. And then and of course we'll probably be addressing the body cam issue.
Perfect. And then my next question, I don't know if you or Mayor would address this. On the sheet that Liz has put up for us right here, hotel motel bed tax.
Mm-hmm.
With NASA opening, wouldn't this estimated 2021 increase?
I don't know. I don't think NASA is going to be open in 2021, but I think 2022 would be a good time to see it. We'd see it bump up.
I thought it was opening in 2021. That's why I was asking.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Yeah, there's some talk. We're hopeful that they will be, but as again, we're just a little conservative on the income side, the revenue side, and a little more aggressive on the expenditures. So, what we've talked to NASA recently, Walt and Mike Greer have been up there a lot. Things are moving along, but we just, we'll time will tell when they're going to be opening. So that's why that was included.
Great. And then my next question about the juvenile diversion fund. I know that we have 0 estimated here. Didn't we do an ordinance last year to start that program again?
We did.
Go ahead, Mayor.
Yeah, sorry, Chief. Yeah, we did, and I don't think we had any participants, Chief. That's my understanding?
No, obviously with the courts being closed, We just don't know what to expect for this year.
Okay,
So obviously we'll assess and then come back once we know what's going on.
okay, great. Does anyone else have other questions for Chief?
No, thank you, Chief, for coming in and giving us the discussion. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you and keep up the good work.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, well, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Hope
Thank
you have a
you,
great
Chairwoman.
Saturday.
Thank you. You do. You stay safe, okay?
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Mary Kay, are you on here? Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How's everybody doing?
Good,
Good,
thanks.
good.
Didn't know if Mayor Cooney had any opening remarks or
Yes,
other-
thank you, Director. Mary Kay, she's got a tough, tough budget as well with aging equipment and obviously the infrastructure needs in our buildings and our streets. She's done a great job, and as is her service department in addressing those things. Put some projects off last year. We have the streets levy this year, which is a big part of our budget. And we're going to be communicating with the residents as to how that impacts the services they receive and the budget if it was not to be renewed. And it is a renewal. But a lot of the things that we're, kind of fall back to what we talked about with Director Kemp, preventative maintenance. We're trying to get the best that we can ahead of some things. As I mentioned earlier, a big concern we have are the flooding issues we have in Ward 5. So we're looking at ways to address that. And that's not just Ward 5, but I know it's parts of Ward 4. And as I've said before, that impacts the whole city when you use a lot of resources in responding to those problems. That's a big ticket item, not something that we can just jump into without a plan. So we're working, Mary Kay and Monica and Kim Kerber have been working on that. And, we'll keep you posted on that. But, we're, again, being conservative on some of the things because of the uncertainty going forward from a revenue standpoint. We understand there's things that we need to do. And then there's always the unexpected. So that's always on our mind. But appreciate Mary Kay's work last year. And again, I mentioned it earlier, she and Carlene really did a lot of work on Shared Work Ohio, which was a benefit to all the departments and saving some cost. And so I appreciate all her work on that. And then she's kind of our jack of all trades. She's at the Gemini Center. She's at the service garage. She's at the pump station, police station, fire station. So I appreciate it, Mary Kay. So thank you.
Thanks, Your Honor. And we've got a presentation, a slide presentation that I'm sure Liz can pull up for us. And it's been a joy to come aboard on this city administrative staff. The opening slide here shows Tony, one of our seniors that lives at Willowwood, who comes over and waters plants for us. And the Lake Erie Starts Here is a graphic that was applied to a lot of our catch basin by Caitlin Patrick, and she's just a wonderful student and resident. So it's been a lot of fun despite a pandemic. So that's my first slide is our even though we are all having a bit of pandemic fatigue, I just wanted to speak to some of the measures we did take last year. So on that second slide, we have cleaned the air ducts in City Hall, and that is to improve the air quality for our employees here. I don't think it was ever done. To spare everybody, I did not put the before and after picture because it was hard to see, but it was not pleasant. But that was an important thing to protect our visitors, our future visitors, but our employees that did come in through the entire pandemic when it was uncertain whether or not what the future held for all of our safety. So we also appreciated being able to implement the door project. We improved circulation at the Gemini, at Bain Cabin, and here at City Hall, and improved our ability to communicate with visitors at the door, which is very important. It's come in handy. Previous to this system being put in, Kathleen would have to go down the stairs, you know, yell through the door, please put your mask on, and now we can do all of that in a much more efficient way. Our bottle filling stations just arrived despite being ordered many months ago. And that's one of the themes, reoccurring themes during the pandemic, that getting materials and contractors, there's just, we had to be patient, but the new bottle filling stations are going in at the Gemini. They're, I think, going to be well appreciated by our visitors when we do open up City Hall, and I think they'll get well used. I know they will at the Gemini. The mayor mentioned layoffs and furloughs. We were able to really keep our employees whole during that. Carlene really worked hard to help our resident, our employees. So I really appreciate that support. Our service department minimized overtime and our cost control measures. We didn't purchase equipment, and really stayed hyper vigilant on what we were purchasing. We did make a purchase of new cleaning machines. These machines were able to spray down surfaces. So our staff can use those at the Gemini, at the Senior Center, and here at City Hall. And we put into place new protocols for personal protective equipment and protocols to wipe down equipment before and after each use, and take temperatures. And a big shout out to our service personnel. They've done a great job meeting those challenges, and I really appreciate that. So on our next slide was part of the silver lining to the COVID condition, which was our 2020 Small Business Micro Grant Project. And so we took funds from our Lorraine Road storefront renovation grant program, and we got permission from Cuyahoga County, which the funds originated from in large part, and we were able to make 26 grant awards to small businesses. And we chose to focus this program on Lorraine Road, not only because the funds came from that street storefront improvement grant fund, but also because our master plan and many of our studies that have been completed really point to Lorraine Road as being an anchor, our main street, and we felt that this was really an appropriate place to offer these businesses that gap financing. So as people were waiting for their PPP or EIDL funding, their stimulus funding, we were able to make these small grants to bridge that wait time. So got to know a lot of these business owners and make some connections, and that was really a bright time. I want to thank our community planner, Monica Jordan. She did an incredible job implementing this project and making sure funds got out as quickly as possible, and really appreciate how nicely that project went. On our next slide, we had a great opportunity to put PACE financing in place. So thank you to City Council for supporting us and helping our contractor secure $15 million in financing. So we do see this project moving forward, even though the pandemic did push back, as you discussed with Chief Shepherd. We see the opening had been planned for this year, but we do believe it's pushing that opening date back. And as the mayor said, Walt Maynard's a great job staying in touch with our developer and keeping us up to date step by step. On the next slide, we also had completed most of the police locker room last year. Punch list items were completed. We're just wrapping up some HVAC items and really looking forward to closing that out this year. And so on the next slide, we also completed the Story Road Thomas Lane Green Space project. It was grant funded from the supplemental grant. And I just wanted to add that our garden club is going to donate 2 additional trees to this space.
Nice.
So yes, it is very nice. Mary Banco lives directly east of the park on Story Road. And I just wanted to make a shout out to the Garden Club. Again, another group that I've had the privilege to get to know this year. They collaborated with us last year for the plantings on Lorraine Road, which were beautiful.
Mhm.
We scaled back as a response to what we anticipated the pandemic bringing our way, but we're going to expand it a little bit this year. So, we look forward. They're so helpful with planting and helping us make those arrangements. So and they not just in the hanging basket, but the planters at the city hall and in areas along Lorraine Road. So really grateful for their support. They're a really wonderful organization. On the next page in 2020, excuse me, next slide, the 2020 sidewalk and tree lawn project was completed on Belvedere, Sanford, Northwood, and Eastwood, west of 210. And so we were able to eliminate some safety and trip hazards. We saw tree lawn trees that had girdled roots, creating these jacked sidewalk blocks. So it was a nice project to implement new standards. So as we look at planting the proper tree that won't have these girdling roots that respond better in the soils, we also did a better job constructing the sidewalks, putting in additional stones so those tree roots have places to go, and so we won't see this type of development in the future. And so 34 new trees, an excellent project. That contractor will be back in the spring to make some additional restoration to the lawn and tree areas. On the next slide, also wrapping up last year was the Mastic Road Hill. And I've included this because we collaborate so well with Cuyahoga County and the Metro Parks. They're just excellent partners. This project is an excellent example of that collaboration. This road is going to close again in the spring for a couple weeks for the county and Kokosings, their contractor, to finish permanent road marking, some fencing, some landscape restoration. So just so you know, we would like to take advantage of that time during the shutdown to divert some groundwater that is rolling over that bottom portion as you approach Valley Parkway, and divert it to a newly reconstructed as part of this road project catch basin. So we don't have the exact time. They have to have a few consecutive days with 50-degree temperatures. So late spring is probably when that's going to happen. On the next slide, in 2020, we completed the West 213 water main replacement project, and another great collaboration with Cleveland Water. These projects replace our service mains and service lines for our residents, and also adds to the new pavement for the street. So Cleveland Water will pave the portion of the street where their work is, or put new curbs in where if their water main happens to be in the tree lawn. And so we can leverage that and make for a nice new surface. Not every street's going to be perfect after we're done. Older streets like 213 have some substreet issues that might not make it perfect, but it's certainly going to improve the rideability. And we see Cleveland Water, the trends for their projects, awarding these funds to projects that include curb to curb paving. So as we move forward with these water projects, we will be making our application part of the project, the curb to curb paving. So it was in this contractor will be back in the spring for some touch-ups to that landscaping as well. So here we are at, every year we talk about salt. This year it was a really icy year. We used a bunch of salt, but we anticipate having at least 800 tons left. And that's been a pretty consistent goal that we've been able to meet over the years. The big issue or story here on this slide is the 2021 cost savings. Our cooperative purchasing program that we can collaborate with offers us this salt purchasing in a substantial savings this year. So the power of the state's contracting is important to us. So we'll continue to use the state's cooperative purchasing program as we look to purchase equipment and vehicles. So that's if there's, I should probably stop and make sure there's no questions. Please jump in if there are any. But on the next slide, we're talking about 2021 now, and at the general fund, maintenance of vehicles. These are pages 12 and 13 in your book, or your sheets. And on page 13, we're like to talk a minute about the maintenance of vehicles. Our building and service department, out of the 39 vehicles that we have, 29 are over 10 years old. So it's an aged fleet, and that doesn't even include the leaf machines and things that we really need to overhaul to make to make our operations as efficient as possible. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. Also on that slide and on page 12 are our signals and traffic funds. We are doing an excellent job keeping up with our street striping. It's an annual project that our traffic department maintains. They do a great job. This year, they would like to switch out some master controls, pedestrian countdown signals that are aging out, and bus interface units, which I know what they do. If you'd like to know, I can get you more information, but they're the piece of equipment that interfaces between the loops and the actual signal itself. It's kind of like an information processing portion of the signal systems. So we also like to replace flags and safety devices, barrels and cones that over time lose their reflective qualities. And we want to keep our employees safe while they do this important work. So on the next slide, also out of the 2021 budget, we're looking at the improvement fund 260. This is page 36. So one of the things we didn't do last year was really get into our roof at City Hall issue. So the photograph of the ice is what occurred this year, and the resulting issues from that is water leaks. And some of the water leaks have been going on for a bit. And in 2019, our contractor, Construction Resources, Inc., did a report. So we knew we had some issues, but we need to do a little bit more work. That initial study indicated that we can do a better job maintaining the roof temperature and the subsequent temperatures under the roof. So we'd like to create a plan. What's going to be the best return on our investment for this building? What do we do with our HVAC? Some are inside a crawl space, some are outside. So we'd like to expand that initial report and have an in-depth report that actually makes some recommendations and possibly compiles a bid specification for us to work on in 2022. This will give us some time to coordinate some funding. You might recall we earn NOPEC funding annually, and some other funding sources to help us mitigate the costs. On the next slide, we're still on page 36 and looking at capital equipment in the Permanent Improvement Fund. Our service department we'd like to see a new big truck, one of the big salt trucks, a 2.5-ton dump truck. We're again going to lease an aerial truck for tree work. And we'll talk a little bit more about tree work later on, but we think that that's a piece of equipment that we can use in a small amount of time while weather is optimal. And then lawnmowers, we have the most park acreage, well, not the most, but we're in the top 5 of park acreage in Cuyahoga County, outnumbering places like Independence and Strongsville for us. And so that's an important resource for us to manage. Our preventative maintenance program, we'd like to look at leasing equipment when possible. So we'll talk a little bit more about specific pieces that we're going to lease and why. We're updating our replacement schedule for equipment. And one of the things we didn't accomplish last year is the sale of out of service equipment. So we'll get that those pieces of equipment out of our way this year. And I also, and this is addressed on pages 36 and 19, but I wanted to talk a little bit about Smith and Obie. They are our annual maintenance for HVAC and our air handling units here at City Hall and Senior Center. And they've been just a wonderful addition to our collaborative efforts. They've worked with us not only on the police department new HVAC unit, but they were really instrumental in helping me with the ductwork cleaning, advice on air handling and how to manage that. And it took a long time to select them. We had some interviews to do, but it was really a great advance for how we address the issues here at City Hall and get the most out of our equipment. So on our next slide is the big news in sewer, page 43. Just to speak to some of our 2021 goals, continue our safety training and look to equipment and maintenance. We have a little generator issue at our West 220 lift station that we've resolved, but you know, it's a constant maintenance project. We are always checking on those services that we provide, and we are looking forward to looking into the 227 lift station as well and plan improvements that will come out of a sewer study that we'll discuss on the next slide. But we want to speak quickly to the equipment. We're looking at the camera van, the sewer camera, and possibly a regional collaboration with one of our neighbors so that we may be able to purchase something together that we can share, because it's not something that we need to use every single day, but that we can, for the most part, schedule with each other. So that would be a great addition. So the other item is our backhoe, and I apologize. Our backhoes from 1999, it is time to replace, but this would be an item that we would look to lease. There are so many specific hydraulics and items that can really go wrong. If we lease this piece of equipment with a maintenance agreement so that they are maintaining it for us during the lease period, I think we could really realize some savings and offer our employees some really quality equipment. Another item we didn't get to last year was the West Valley Pump Station. Now, this would be hard to find. You really have to look for it in West Valley Lane, but there's a small pump that services as a handful of residents, and it is structurally starting to require some updates and repairs. So it's a small project, but something that we think is important to get to this year. And on the next slide, we continue to talk about our sewer fund, and just a quick discussion about some collaboration. Our Cuyahoga County Public Works really helps us on projects and repairs that are a little bit beyond our ability. One in particular was on South Park Drive. And in fact, they had to hire their contractor. That it was just one of those projects that there were a lot of gas lines, water lines, a repair to a manhole and laterals. It was just a complicated project, but having them as a partner in these repairs allowed us to get the work done. Again, you may recall in front of Gillis School, Gillis Suite, we had a repair that they were able to rearrange their schedule, drop everything, and make the repair before school opened. So we really appreciate their partnership in these repairs. We want to mention Clarity Wastewater Sanitary Sewer Certified Operator 2. It's a requirement for every city to have, and they help us meet those requirements from the EPA. So the next slide is the big story in Fund 510, the sewer study. So a shout out to McKay Engineering. They've been a great partner in this project and every project that we complete. Their excellent plans and the work that they put in prior to a project is, it shouldn't be taken for granted. It makes for quality work, and this study will be just another element that gives us the proper data, that gives us the proper information so that we plan and execute projects that bring us the biggest return on our investment. So we have already met with subcontractors that are going to help them. We've met at the lift station there at 227 and really do look forward to that work being accomplished. On the next slide, we move into great news. Their 2021 capital, and that's going to be on the last page. I believe that's page 69. The big story is street paving and our levy. And so I want to thank each and every one of you for supporting this renewal. It's the fourth renewal. The last time was in 2013 that we were renewing this. And it's a 0.25% renewal of income tax that allows us to make these critical capital and street improvements. So not to make a spoiler alert, but I think Kathleen Fayan, who does a great job on our newsletter, is going to include some information. So follow along with her link that will bring you to lovely information on our website that is an excellent synopsis of the work we've done over the years. Bids open March 22nd for the West 210 Lorraine to Mastic paving project. The big story here is the 1.335 908 price tag, but the community planner Monica Jordan and previous administration were able to secure the TIP NOACA funding, Transportation Improvement Program, and Cuyahoga County Public Works funding, so that our estimated local match is around $17,182, depending on how these bids come in. So while these are big numbers, they're going to bring so many improvements to our community and really improve the quality of life for everyone that lives here. On our next page, we are looking at capital investments this year for water line improvements. These are located on pages 44 and 27 from funds 550 and 210. This year, our water line work is on Cromwell, Parkwood, and Bain Park Drive from West 210 to 213. You can see that the Cleveland Division of Water portion is more than half of the project cost. And so we really love leveraging this work to also provide new, very rideable, newly paved streets. So we'll continue to secure funding for these. This will be something that we will apply for again this year in 2020 for additional work in 2022. So on our next slide, just to speak a little bit back to 2020, We completed a grant-funded street tree inventory management plan. This was a great study funded by the Cuyahoga County Healthy Tree Canopy Grant. We planted 30 trees on Lorraine Road, and we rehabbed the tree boxes so that our trees would have a real excellent chance to mature, and we'll continue to monitor and maintain them. So this resource helps us plant the right tree in the right soil and helps point to our efforts so that we can efficiently manage the resources in our community. Trees add so much value to our properties and our quality of life. So on the next slide, we talk about our 2021 efforts. Our community planner handed in 2 grant applications this year for this program. And so this was the first year a regional applications would be accepted, and we submitted one for Tri-City Park. I think that really uniquely poises us for a very successful grant application. We're working with Westlake and Rocky River. One of the items that our report that was completed last year indicated that our large tree species is low. We should have about 20% of our tree stock consist of these large species, and we only have about 5%. So that is an effort in that grant, as well as our own city grant. So we're going to leverage that study that was completed last year and increase large tree varieties and Bain. So as we look at Bain from Parkdale to Seabury, planting trees in a way that won't interfere with potential future programming, so that we'll still be able to provide shade for the playground and provide new varieties and add a lot of appeal and also include tree lawn trees for some of our streets in adjacent neighborhoods, Briarwood, Overlook, Marion Circle, and Elizabeth. So we'll keep you updated as to the status of those 2 applications. On the next page, we're looking forward to our Payne Park restroom project. So on page 36, out of Fund 260, it's $179,606.50 is our estimate. Half of that funding coming from our ODNR grant. So our replacement facility is a 1-room restroom. We just don't, we don't believe that multi-room restrooms is going to be in high demand, but what we do want to offer is an updated facility so that when people rent our pavilion, they have a nice facility. We're going to move it a little closer to that pavilion, out of that dark corner. So it's a little bit more visible, a little bit more accessible. And so we're really looking forward to it. It's a unique project, and I look forward to further discussions about this progress of that project. On the next slide, we're looking at our capital fund, again, back to page 69. We made our application for community development block grant funds for sidewalks. And what's exciting about this project not only is its ability to offer connectivity to the proposed trail that will lead to the metro parks along Mastic Road. We also would use the funds to reconfigure the intersection where all those green arrows are pointing. That's Eaton, West Point, and Parkcliff. It actually, from this aerial, looks like it could be a roundabout. It is so wide, and we feel that if we can reconstruct it to be narrower, it's going to be safer for our pedestrians, plus add a level of safety where cars actually stop and slow down, and we know that this is a high complaint stop for our complaint zone where people are concerned about cars maybe not making complete stops. So another shout out to community planner Monica Jordan for her good efforts. It's going to be an excellent project, and our infrastructure improvements continue on the next slide. So our capital improvements, just some things, that we want to talk about. So, crack sealing is something we didn't do last year, but it's really important to our maintenance of our streets. It really helps the streets last longer. So we also, don't have a lot of time. Our West 227 bridge project, our engineering starts this year, and we're going to be doing some of our environmental testing, and more to come as we look to construction being in 2023. So we'll talk more about that next year. But this year, this is just a recap that, we're going to be busy. And our next slide, just to talk briefly on goals. And recap some of the things that we want to do, talking about our roofs issues, talking about our service garage the mayor touched on earlier. We do a great job in our parks. We've done excellent work in our community, and often, our own facilities, we don't prioritize them in front of those public spaces in our parks. And so, as we move forward, we really want to take the time to improve our facilities in a really responsible way and leverage funding where we can. Another goal for our service personnel is to continue our safety committee and continue our training. They've been a really great group of professionals, and I'm so proud of their abilities, and I'm very proud of their reaction during the pandemic, coming in and being with us and doing the work that keeps our community safe. So our next slide is a bit of a time to just look to the future, pay special attention to our refuse collection as we look to our last and final year of our contract extension with Republic. We see in the future having to look to a new contract, and as we look at other communities that have established new contracts, we know that those prices are going to go up. And so we, our goals over this next year is to plan for that. Our sanitary sewer fund also, as we discuss with our North Olmsted professionals and our Rocky River professionals, wastewater treatment's expensive. Water quality is an important matter for the Ohio EPA and for our professionals at these plants, but it's expensive. It requires capital improvements on an annual basis for them. So we will continue to monitor those costs and respond accordingly. And some of our response is going to be special attention to how we can collaborate and minimize our costs and leverage funds. And I think we do an excellent job with our grant funding, and we'll continue those efforts. On the next slide, we talk more about how that collaboration can really help us manage our funds. And one of our goals is to collaborate with our local businesses and developing a real economic development plan that pulls in our business owners as stakeholders. So looking forward to future opportunities to leverage our Lorraine Road storefront opportunities, refund that program, and continue the great efforts that we've made and the great leaps forward. And I want to mention Leon Sampit, his development on Lorraine Road, where he's improved Preppy Pet. You may recall the transformative efforts that he's made, and he continues to update that property and bring in an Asian fusion restaurant. It's going to be exciting to see. So on our next slide, we talk a little bit about our emphasis on small business, our technology corridor on Brook Park Road. We've applied for Transportation for Livable Communities Initiative funds, TLCI is what we call that, to study this corridor and then leverage that study to make improvements. Aerozone has been an excellent partner. I've really enjoyed participating in their monthly meetings, and it's really important to us to capitalize on NASA, to capitalize on the series development where we're going to see the boutique hotel and the apartments develop, and we want to continue that momentum, and we're very certain that this project will help us do so. And then continue to stay in communication with Westgate, in conversation with them. They've been very stable despite this pandemic. 3 stores closed. One was Justice that closed before the pandemic really took a hold. So we're really excited about Earth Fair. They're moving incrementally along, and so staying in communication with our property management folks and the businesses. It was really exciting and fun to be at the Bippy Bop ribbon cutting and a grand opening, and hopefully more. I was just there last night and I couldn't find a parking space between BW3, Conteros, and Bippy Bop. I had to park over by Alta, which is just wonderful, wonderful to see. So on our next slide, we're looking
for 1 second.
Absolutely, please.
So you mentioned Earth Fair is making incremental additions. Does that mean we're confirmed?
Well, what they have said is that they're not, not ready for permits, but they'll be in touch with us about getting permits. So we're very, very optimistic, but they are, and understandably so, they're taking their time, and they've asked us for patience as they are opening some other stores in other regions, and with an eye on opening back up in Fairview Park. So no.
Last we knew, I think they come in looking for plans, but under an entity unknown. So it's nice to hear it's confirmed that it's that group. Thank you.
Right. Yes, we've had a nice email from them that they understand that they need to have a certificate of occupancy, which will require some permits and some inspections. And so we've connected them with Walter Maynard in their building department. So we're confident that that we'll hear more from them, but we'll, and they've asked for patience, and we're happy just to hear them to, maintain communications with us. So that's another goal, just to stay in communication. So on our next slide, we talk a little bit, because it's not all about business and economic development. We do want to look to our housing stock. We see national real estate trends of people, as a result of the pandemic, realizing that they don't have to stay in urban centers because technology can allow them to live anywhere they want, really, and still be connected. So we, Councilman Minnick has communicated with me. We see our real estate values and home sales really solid. And so one of the things I wanted to talk about are the CRAs, which is just an excellent opportunity for our residents to improve housing stock, but use a CRA as a real incentive. And so in 2019, the 25 new CRA credits were approved. There was a couple from Thomas Lane and River South, and 9 expired that year. So in 2020, there were 13 new CRAs that go into effect this year. This year, we'll know probably in mid-year what the next 2022 CRAs are going to be. But this year, 23 expire, including one for United Telephone Credit Union, which is a little over 1.3 million. So great opportunities, CRA incentives. To qualify, you must add square footage to your property. That could be a garage, an addition, or a new house. We've seen a trend in demoing houses and rebuilding them, especially when you have a beautiful piece of property along a public park, perhaps. So those are excellent opportunities. Yes.
Could you remind me what's CRA an acronym for?
That is our community reinvestment. And it's so there is a commission, it meets annually. Councilman at Large Berger attended our previous meeting, and Walt Maynard does a really nice job managing all of the data and when things are falling off, and making sure that that information is reported to finance and that gets reported to the county. So just a great shout out to a very busy department to offer these incentives to our residents. It's really a beautiful place to grow, and this is one of those reasons why.
Yep, Maureen. Oh, sorry, I was going to jump.
Go ahead, please. Please.
DRA. Maureen, I remember giving a report on that. I was talking about properties and projects that had the tax abatements and the construction costs and things like that. And so we review every abated property, every property that's qualified for tax abatement in the city, and then what's coming. And so that's what the CRA was. Thank you. Sorry for jumping in.
Yeah, I got community reinvestment, and then I was trying to think of what the A was.
Area Housing Council.
Okay, thank you.
And so on our next slide, we just want to talk about the graphic. I love this graphic. It's from the 2020 Cuyahoga County data book, and it shows Fairview Park being high on the list of percentage of change in jobs that our residents experienced. And I think this really is a nice graphic that shows a trend towards perhaps younger people. A LinkedIn study shows that in the first decade out of college, people change their jobs 4 times. So it's more attributed to a younger population to have a higher level of job changes. So we do see that this community is a great place to grow. And so we want to support that by making sure our businesses are healthy, that they have a stake in a stakeholder process, and work with our regional collaborators like Power of One, Aerozone, and even reach out to our area, other Chamber of Commerces. So those are some goals for this year. In the next slide, we also want to work with larger business interests. That's where collaborating with Aerozone will help. Also making connections with our large employers, Hospice of the Western Reserve doing a wonderful job maintaining personnel. It's really nice to see that they have been able to stay strong even during a pandemic. And so as we look at some of the data, we see a lot of healthcare professionals in our community, even dental labs and dentists. And, I see an opportunity to really connect our healthcare professionals. So as you may notice, we've started a little spotlight for local businesses in our newsletter. We want to continue to do that, to make those connections, not just within the professional community, but with our residents as well. And so on the last slide, finally, right, the 2020 capital investments, and this is just a shout out to, again, Monica Jordan, our community planner, getting grant funding for these wonderful investments in our community, our partnerships with Cleveland Water, the county, ODNR, NOACA, and those relationships will help us maintain these exciting projects that we have well into the future. So thank you so much for this time. I really appreciate it. And I would imagine there's questions, so I'm happy to answer any that may have come up as I ran literally through that presentation. Come on, you got to stump the director. There's got to be one question.
I do have a question that's not necessarily related to the budget, but I know Director Kemp had presented a capital improvements plan to us. And I know you and I have talked privately about that in the past. Is there a chance that we'll see something like that in the next 6 months so that we can start planning, understanding that there's a lot to do here infrastructure wise in the city?
Yes. So I have started that this past year where I've rated the streets. I'm about 3/4 of the way through ranking each street. So each street is assigned a number 1 through 10 so that when people ask, why aren't you paving my street? We can say, well, here's where it is in the ranking. Here's where we can see it coming up in the next couple years to be ready to be paved. We need to pave the streets that are at 1 or below. So that's part of the process. And yes, so within the next 6 months, we should be able to provide that 5-year capital improvement schedule. And that includes the vehicles that I alluded to earlier. We're updating that schedule as well. So they go hand in hand.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Director Costello, you mentioned bottle filling stations for the rec center. Are you also
Yes.
getting one to for the 3rd floor of City Hall? That was
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
And also with COVID, I know last year there were a lot of changes to shifts so that people could keep their proper distancing. Are those hours still shifted, or are they going back, or what's going on with that?
So we did pull an employee into a night shift to help clean, and it was helpful. The employee did it voluntarily take that shift so that he could have that social distancing. Currently, we have shifted employees into night shifts for snow plowing purposes, but they also help with monitoring Cleveland water holes and salting places that tend to ice up, like that groundwater area on Mass Road Hill. And so those people will come off those shifts probably at the end of March, beginning of April, as we look to see how the weather is playing out.
Great, thank you.
Welcome.
Director Costello,
Yes, sir.
would it be possible to receive a copy of the Jason Knowles report?
Absolutely. I'll get that to you. And I just wanted to mention my appreciation to the Shade Tree Advisory Committee. They were instrumental in making recommendations for this year's grant application. They've been a wonderful resource, and it's just been great to get to know them. They're very dedicated, and they meet monthly, and they're really a resource that I failed to mention. So I just want to send out my appreciation to each and every one of them as well.
All right. Well, thank you, Mary Kay. I appreciate all the information and extend gratitude back to all the the service workers and people in those departments we don't get to interact with regularly, and just let them know we appreciate everything they do.
Thank you. I will pass that on.
Yeah, thank you, Mary Kay.
Thank you all.
All right, any other questions for Director Costello? All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. And I know I do see Chief Raffin on
Thanks, Mary Kay.
the line. I would like to take just a quick 5-minute break though, if that's okay, and then get to Chief Raffin.
That would be appreciated.
All right, let's take a quick 5 minutes and we'll come back at 11:05. It's 11:05. So I'd like to get back to the swing of things here. Welcome, Chief Raffin, if you want to take it away.
Sure, thanks. You should have all received a PDF document. Liz, can you bring that up and just, it's a real brief, just an overview of last year, just some highlight summary points. And then we'll get going here.
That is a very intense fire picture that we all have great memory of, and I'm sure you guys celebrated the anniversary this year, right?
Oh, it was just, that summarizes the very intense year. Liz, if you could bring that up just a little bit, because I'm not seeing the full page on my screen, so I don't know if that's the case.
If we'd have known that was the best of what 2020 might bring, oh boy.
Amen.
Madam Chair, if I could just jump in real quick.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, Tony's apologized for burning a fire truck, and I wish that was the highlight of the year last year, but certainly wasn't. But as we reflect on things, nobody was hurt in that fire. We've been fortunate that people haven't been hurt with the pandemic, so that's the most important thing. Tony's, is I don't know if are you still a CPA, Tony, or a former CPA?
No, I don't practice anymore, so don't get any crazy ideas.
Okay, well, he's a CPA, so I'll let him go through the numbers quick, much better than I. But we have a levy for the fire department coming up again in May. They'll explain to you the importance of that. You'll see that. One of the things that we've talked about is the EMS collection fund. That's we've seen a decrease in that. The chief, Greg, and I have talked about that, and he's going to be looking into ways to. I mean, there's a number of factors that have gone into that drop, and we're going to be looking at addressing that and hopefully increasing that collection here in the future. So, thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll yield back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Chief, if you want to take it away.
Sure. So the summary was pretty brief this year. I just wanted to give you guys some highlights to reflect back on. And there's the dog right on cue. The cover page really, it just has a little piece of our mission statement down there, and it says excellence in service and commitment to the safety of the citizens of the community. And what I really want to remind everybody is everything that we do at the fire department is around that thought. I mean, if we can't make it better for the community, there's really no need in doing it. So as we jump forward, the next slide on there, that page 2, it's just going to give you a breakdown of the runs. Very close to the previous year. Previous year, we were at 23.99, and that same kind of makeup. Approximately 6% of the runs end up being for the fire service, and then the majority are for medical. The other emergency services that you're seeing up there tend to be, the hazmat runs, water rescue runs, calls where people's smoke detectors are going off. They're not sure why it's beeping in the fashion that it is. So just anything that can't be categorized into those two other categories. If you'll take the next page, please, Liz. So Westcom dispatch, I think it's important that we put it in there. I know you guys discussed a little bit about the police dispatch. Westcom dispatch has been our dispatch. It's our regional dispatch for the West Shore area since March of 2006. And it really is the reason that we're able to operate the way we do. That fire that you saw on the first page, and then the fire that you're going to see here on the subsequent page, same fire. But in situations like that, any kind of working structure fire, we can't do it without them. They take about 17,000 calls a year, and those are dispatched calls. Those aren't the calls that they take. Those are dispatched calls throughout the West Shore region. And obviously the 2,400 or so make up our portion of that. So if you want to flip one more time there, if you don't mind, to the next slide. Yep. So the Hilliard Road fire, as you pointed out, been a year ago already, was not the best time of anybody's career fires. Rocky River had a truck that was damaged. We obviously had a truck that was damaged. And this fire grew to an enormous proportion very quickly because of the open construction. Luckily, nobody was hurt. We did an outstanding job communicating amongst the 7 different communities that were there. 50 firefighters were there. But this really goes to show where we've come as a department since 2006 as a result of Westcom. This fire got dispatched to all the stations at the same time. We didn't have to wait for people to get on scene to call for help. Westcom took care of that. So just a little bit of an emphasis as to what Westcom does for us. If you go ahead and flip the pages again, please. So this past year was, we had 2 retirees. That was Kevin Dugan and Captain Kevin Kilbane. They both retired towards the beginning of the year, and then we could not get firefighters in fast enough because the pandemic was just starting to grow. So in March of 2020, we hired Cal Knowlton. He is to the mayor's left, and Doug Sadowski. He is, well, to the left as you look at the picture of the mayor, sorry, and to the right of the picture, left of the mayor, will be Doug Sadowski. They both, ironically enough, they both have fathers that are at North Ridgeville Fire Department, hired on the exact same day in the same fashion. So these 2 guys knew each other growing up, and somehow or another, as things go, they ended up hired the same day at the same department, and they've been spectacular in helping us out. Along with that, if you can flip the page again, Liz. As a result of Captain Kilbane leaving, we had 2 promotions. To the left of the picture is Captain Tim Draves. He was promoted from the position of lieutenant, and then from firefighter to the position of lieutenant was currently now Lieutenant Joe Lamping. They are both veterans of the fire department. Tim has been with us, I believe, since he's been there 17 years, and Joe, I believe, has been there about 12 years. So really glad, really proud to do that. They're both outstanding people. And if you can flip one final time, and then the dreaded coronavirus, right? So out of any of the departments, this probably affected us the most. We didn't have the pleasure of being able to shut down. We didn't have the pleasure of being able not to do things. So any of your questions, I will not just say that it was coronavirus. There's very much some explanation to quantify the differences and the variances that you see. It's pretty easygoing. But just some of those points that you see up on there, we immediately opened a second station through the help of the administration in securing position down at the senior center. We tightened our spending as much as possible. We really didn't do any discretionary spending whatsoever. We shifted our manning so that we really focused on having maximum manning during the daytime hours, and then we tended to brown out at night. COVID patients, as you can see, accounted for about 20%, 22% of our run volume. And then really fundamentally or operationally speaking, going forward, COVID will have forever changed what we do at the fire department. We will probably stay a locked down department just because there's so much cross-contamination that is possible. We will stay wearing masks, gloves, and goggles on all of our runs. But the difficult part is that we have to continue operating as a family when we're at work. So you have 6 guys that are there typically, and it's just a challenge to make things all work out. So with that, I think you should have another PDF up there, Liz, that looks like a spreadsheet. We'll get into the budget part of it. And I know this is a little bit small on the screen, and that's fine. Everybody should have a copy of it in front of them. And what I really wanted to do, as I've done in years past, was to combine my budget so that everybody had a budget at a one glance sort of shot. My budget it's made up of 3 different funds. So if you look at the green segment there, it says 2021 appropriations, and Fund 100 is general fund. Fund 270 is my levy fund, and 781 is my EMS billing. So really, it's important to understand that not everything comes out of the general fund. We are about 22% self-funding, meaning that we either get it through levy funds or through EMS billings. The rest obviously comes out of the general fund. So what I'll do is I'll bring your attention to the bottom total number down there for that's sort of in that light orange down in the bottom right-hand side of the spreadsheet. It's the $2.99 million budget. That is our final budget. And when I take the personnel costs and contractual obligations out, those being like the personnel, the overtime, the healthcare, things like that, I'm down to about $129,000 of quote unquote managed money. And when I start taking out, if you look at that penciled in piece that I put down there, unavoidable things like billing, we get charged when we do our EMS billing, and that comes directly out of the billing proceeds. Fuel, we have to keep the vehicles fueled as much as we want. The guys don't like to push them around too much. So we make sure there's gas in them. Vehicle expenditures, just making sure that any of the things that get fixed do get fixed. Grant money, and then comms, meaning our radio bills that we have to pay. Those are all really unavoidable. And there's really nothing that we can do about that. So that final number that you get down there, that $57,000, that truly is our discretionary spending, which represents about 2% of the budget. And, as opposed to going through line by line, because it is so small, I'm happy to open up with questions at that point.
I have a general question for you. Do you have any equipment that that you think is going to be expiring this year or will need replacement this year?
No, so I will tell you that our big, huge focus this year, and I will answer your question, no doubt, but the big focus this year is the levy, because without the levy, we can't do, if the levy fails, we have a big problem.
Mm-hmm.
So I would ask you guys to get out there and tell your constituents, please, vote for the levy, vote for the levy, vote for the levy. We end up getting, like I said, between the billing and the levy, we fund about 22,000 or 22% of our budget. But to answer your question, do we have anything that we're looking to replace? Probably in the next 5 years, and really next year's budget meeting is when I'll have a better idea of what I'm able to do after hopefully the levy passes. But we will look at replacement of an ambulance. It's about 22 years old. We'll look at potentially doing the floor of the apparatus bay, which needs to be redone. And then probably looking at some of the revamping the kitchen area, all of which hasn't, with the exception of the ambulance, of course, the building things haven't been taken care of since the construction of the building. But for this year, no, we've done a great job. The guys have done a spectacular job since I've been the chief of just getting things tweaked here and there. We feel very comfortable where we are with the grants, with the apparatus that we've purchased over the years. So we're very happy with where we are right now.
Great, thank you. Other questions for the chief?
Chief, the only question that I have is relating to the overtime line item.
Sure.
So I see that it looks like it's increased by about $9,000 this year. Is that just an estimate based on assuming that you'll have additional sickness due to the pandemic, or just because every single year overtime seems to increase? What is the reasoning for that increase?
So you have to take into consideration, and you're just talking this year's budget versus last year's budget. Does that sound correct?
Yep.
So just taking into consideration some of the increases that impact just payroll in general, you have firefighters that are being promoted from level to level. So the pay that we had last year in 2020 is not the same pay that we have in 2021. Because take, for instance, those two firefighters that were in the picture with the mayor, Cal and Doug, right? They got paid at an entry level last year. So automatically this year, they're up to a new level, plus they got a raise of their 2.5%. So those are all things we have to consider. And the $9,000 is a good round number to hopefully, take that into consideration.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, Chief. Well, I don't really have any questions for you, but I appreciate you coming in, and please extend gratitude to all the firefighters in the department. We don't get to interact with them really at all. And so, if we just express the appreciation we have for them for everything they do for us, it'd be appreciated.
No, really. And I appreciate it. I appreciate everything you guys do to help out with things when we need them. And as the mayor said, I'll echo it. If anybody has any questions that come up that are not part of the budget hearings as to, whether or not or why this is gone down or why that's gone down. And we tend to keep a pretty good track of the analytics of everything. And we have it pretty readily available, if not within just a few minutes.
Thank you very much.
Anything else for the chief?
Madam Chair, if I may, just while the chief is here,
Yes.
as we're concluding here, is that I don't want to get into the budget book too much here, but on page 15, we were talking a lot about needs this year, equipment, building improvements. And I just want to focus council's attention on on page 15 is a permanent improvement fund. And that fund is funded by property tax revenues. And roughly about 378,000 collected each year. And, you know, included in that fund, again, building improvements is Chief Shepherd said, purchase of 2 police cruisers this year. And we have 2 leases in the fire department. One is for the fire truck that the chief was talking about. That lease goes until 2033. And that's $63,655 a year. And then there's a lease for a pumper truck that the final payment will be made in 2022. That's $30,749. So 94,000 of that 378 is really already committed or spoken for through next year. So there aren't a lot of dollars with respect to improvement, building improvements, equipment purchases. You know, the other sources would be the general fund, want to, you know, continue to remain solvent, and then maybe look at, you know, the cable franchise fund if need be. So I just wanted to point that out, you know, for council's knowledge and, you know, just thoughts moving forward, that there aren't a lot of dollars in that fund 260, and, you know, there are a lot of needs that need to be addressed here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, well, thank you very much, Chief, for your time today. I really appreciate it.
No problem. I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
All right, Mayor, do you want to take the floor?
Sorry about that. I lost you. Pretty standard stuff for us. You know, as Mary Kay talked about, we're looking to do some increased economic development issues, and reaching out to our businesses and residents. One of the things that we're also looking to do, we know that we feel that our website could use an update. You know, we're looking to do that. Don't have anything concrete in this year's budget, but one of the things that we've looked at is like a text service where individuals, if they have a question, they could text a question about bulk pickup to a number, and they would get a response as to when bulk pickup is, the dates are, things of that nature. So we've been looking into that, and that would come out of the general fund 7790, and we hope to have an update for people here in the next month or so. Other than that, you know, we're just, you know, I don't have much else. You know, salaries and memberships. I know for the memberships, you look at that number, it's a big line item. I can tell you that the Cuyahoga County Mayors and Managers Association has been a wonderful resource this past year, especially. That is all the mayors and managers in Cuyahoga County. Prior to the pandemic, we met in person. After the pandemic, we had phone conferences. We recently had a Zoom conference, and it's, you know, it's just a wealth of knowledge with the mayors. They bring in, you know, Director Allen, Commissioner Allen from the Cuyahoga County Board of Health was providing regular updates. We have some calls with the governor. You know, it's just keeps everybody informed. it's good to know what trends are in other cities. And, it's been a good resource. This year, Fairview Park is hosting the West Shore Community of Government COG, and that's been another great resource, as Mary Kay was talking about, the collaborations that we have. When Chief Shepherd was looking to, and we're talking about the jail and dispatch services, I did talk to some of the mayors here in the West Shore about working with them. Obviously, North Olmsted is in our COG, but seeing what the interest is with other cities about, see if we can regionalize some of our services as a respect to jail or dispatch. The timing was important for us. As the chief mentioned, we have a couple of lieutenants retiring this year, so it was not something that worked with the other cities. But those are some costs that we incur, but I feel we get a lot of value from them. I know Councilwoman King, Councilman Berger, we had a chance to tour North Olmsted's wastewater treatment plant. They've been very helpful to us. In the past, they're helpful, they've offered their services going forward. The various mayors have been very helpful too. We had a lot of experience with Mayor Clough, Mayor Bobst, Mayor Kumar in Bay Village. And, throughout last year, they were really helpful to myself. I know, and I would think Mayor George from Lakewood would concur in that. So, so you look at some of these costs and wonder what they're for, but the collaborations that we have in place and are going to have going forward, it really provided a lot of value to our residents. And I just wanted to point that out. I don't know if there's any other questions.
Anyone have questions for the mayor at all? Great. Well, thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if,
Is Tim on?
I don't think so. I'll text him, and I don't know if you want to.
Well, maybe we'll just move on to finance then, to Greg, and then maybe Tim will be on. I mean, we are early, so.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
I'm going to turn it over to Deanna. Deanna's been patiently waiting this morning, so I'm going to let her walk through the budget for the finance department. But I want to personally thank Deanna and Carlene. You do a wonderful job for your city, and they process a lot of work. We're a small department, and they process a lot of work, and I'm very grateful for their hard work, and I just want to recognize that. And I thank Deanna for putting this book together on short notice. I apologize for the issues that we had in the printing, but that was resolved. And again, I thank Deanna for working through that. So Deanna, it's all yours.
Thank you, Greg. Good morning. Still morning, I believe. Good morning, everyone. Our budget for the finance department has not really changed from last year. Wages, personnel services, and our major cost is our software expenditure for our contract and support for the finance software. Also, to draw your attention to page 32 on the appropriations, that was our expenditures for the CARES Act money that the city received. The departments worked really well helping me to code expenditures for equipment or supplies they needed, and also for wages that we were able to expend with this CARES Act money from their regular budgets. Any questions?
Anyone have questions for Deanna?
No, Deanna, I don't have any questions, but likewise, what I've said to some of the other people, I know we get some monthly updates from you from time to time, which we appreciate, and we know you do a lot for the city. So, you know, we don't get the opportunity to say thank you very often. So I would like to say thank you. I think you do a great job, and we appreciate everything.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may, this page that you're looking at currently, there's a lot of work that went into compiling this data. And then these figures were submitted to the Office of Budget and Management at the state, and there were no issues. So we thank Deanna for compiling all these with the help of the department heads, but there was a lot of work to go into accounting for almost $1 million, a little bit over $1.2 million that was received from the U.S. Treasury. So again, Deanna, thanks for compiling this and accurately reporting it to the state with no concerns.
Thank you.
Yeah, nice work.
Madam Chair, if I could follow up on that point too,
Yes,
please.
please.
I would completely agree with Greg on that, and he certainly was part of that, Deanna, and he worked very well together. And one of the challenges that we had last year with the CARES Act, while we're grateful to receive it, was we didn't, for a long time, we weren't sure where we could slot it. And so there was a lot of back and forth. And as time went on, there was more discretion provided to, you know, municipalities, how they could use it. So this you know, this screen had a lot of different, there was a lot of different versions of it before we got to the final version. And I appreciate Deanna's hard work and you know, in coordinating it, especially at the end. There was a lot of deadlines up you know, up until December. We were still looking at ways that we could maximize the use of those funds for the city. So appreciate all her efforts on this specifically, but overall last year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Greg or Deanna, do you foresee in the future receiving more money, relief fund money, just so we can continue to get PPE?
I have not heard of anything coming for 21.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, there was some discussion. I was on a call last week that you know, the act that they voted on earlier today, that there might be some funds for local governments. You know, the Senate has to weigh in on that. I know there's a lot of resistance in Washington I shouldn't say, there's some resistance in Washington on helping local governments. And we've been told that in Columbus, there's a number of legislators who think that cities are in pretty good positions, and that you know, if there's funds specifically with respect, like from the rainy day fund in Ohio, that you know, municipalities aren't in need of that. They're in good financial position. So we did not budget for it. You know, we're keeping an eye on those funds, but you know, it's so uncertain that, you know, we're not budgeting for it. And we'll keep you posted if we hear things, but at this point, we don't know.
Perfect, thank you. Right, any other questions for Deanna or Greg? All right, wonderful. Well, thank you guys. Do we want to go to councils then while we wait for Tim? Would that be okay with everyone?
I think that sounds great.
Yeah, he should be on in about 5-10 minutes.
Okay, but yeah, then we can go through council.
Thank you.
Well, didn't take too long. I have up here the breakout of all of our lines. Pretty straightforward. Some of them, the numbers are adjusting up or down based on 2020 numbers. We did, like a lot of other departments, didn't use a lot of our discretionary funds. We actually put about half of ours back. And there is, and Greg, I don't know where this was put, but there was a request for 51 total for council chambers reconfiguration for AV and security. I had gotten a quote for this back in 2015 and actually am planning to meet with I believe it's the vice president of Paladin who installed our current outdated system that's up there to walk around and get this updated. I know one of the things that I've talked to council president and actually the finance chair about is the fact that we're doing these Zoom meetings, and which I guess is a good thing that people are attending. Our viewership has gone up astronomically. So looking at having that option to do that when we do go back into chambers. So that number is not an absolute number, but it was based off of the quote that I received before, and we'll hopefully get an update on. But I didn't want to not put it in the budget so that it's not a shock when and if it does actually move forward. So if anybody has any questions on anything, just ask away.
Yeah, what's the furniture?
Furniture and fixtures, that is what I just talked about, the AV and security. I also have, and I don't know that it'll be done, but I have in my office in particular, my chair is kind of falling apart. And there's also a shelf in my office that is soon to be falling apart. It's starting to lag in the back. The back part, poster board or whatever is holding up the back of it, is starting to go and separate. So that's something that I'm looking to hopefully get replaced. So yeah, that's what that's for.
Okay. And then the increase in the training and education?
The training and education, the increase of $1,350 is actually, I just received notice. I was, I guess, recruited to participate in a program by Cleveland State University that actually, it's kind of like Leadership Cleveland, if anybody's heard of that, but it's specifically for public managers, the Certified Public Manager Program. It actually certifies you. It's a nationally accredited program, but this would come out with the certification of being a certified public manager, not only for the state of Ohio, I guess it would be recognized nationally. So the actual sticker price for that is $2,700. But like I said, I just received notice that they would give me a 50% scholarship. So that is where that $1,350 comes from.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And that's not a given. I have to look at my own personal situation because it is a program that it runs from, it's very intensive. It starts April of this year and runs all the way through February of next year. And I do have a child that will turn into a senior during that time. So I need to decide. They said if I don't do it this year, they would be more than happy to grant it next year. But I have a child that's getting ready to be a senior in high school, if anyone's lived through that. So I need to decide whether that's something that I want to commit to this year. So.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for preparing it and getting everything together for, the whole budget discussions this year as well.
Agreed. It looks good. Thank you. Oh, you know what, Liz? I do have one question. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So I noticed under the postage, advertising and printing,
Mm-hmm.
they're requesting the same appropriation as 2020. So the $3,000. We have, I believe, 2 levies that will be going on this year. Is that going to be enough money for that? Does that account for what we've done in previous double levy years?
Well, as you can see, I had actually appropriated that money, as you can see, in the year in 2020, but we did not do that last year. So that's basically asking for the same money for that very reason to do the ads this year. I was told by the Board of Elections that they should be assigned issue numbers. I believe he said March 5th. So I'm holding on doing that advertisement so that I can also, in addition to, you know, stating what it is, that I can actually put the issue number in with the ad so people are aware of the two different numbers for the both of them. So it is accounted for, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Liz, can you send us, Mary Kay, myself, Greg, the estimates from 2015 with respect to those
Yep.
items?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may, while we wait for Tim,
Yes, Greg.
so that $50,000 in the furniture and fixtures, that will be included in Fund 260. However, for this year, after talking to the mayor and Chief Shepherd, after they met, I think Chief Shepherd met with Liz. The other request was for 50,000. We started the budget at 25,000 for that line item. Talking to Chief Shepherd, he thought some of the stuff could be done up there with respect to security. Again, this is the fund that would account for building improvements. You know, we got a roof issue here, a roof issues here, issues with the back garage. So as I stated a few minutes ago, dollars are at a premium in Fund 260. So we began the budget at $25,000. If we have to amend it, we'll amend it. But I want to make you aware of just, you know, the funding source and the potential needs here into the future.
Okay, thank you for advising me of that, because I wasn't aware of any of that. I will, and again, I base those numbers off of 2015, which I will be sending. That did include, just so you all know, in that original quote, upgrading our processors, digital audio recorder, wireless mics. As you guys know, we have the goosenecks that are attached to the system in my office, changing them over from gooseneck to wireless, video editions, and a recording camera edition. So that's what all that includes. But yes, I will forward that to everyone, actually.
And also, I think it'd be helpful to, I appreciate you sending that, to see if there's another fund or some other, you know, efficiencies that we might be able to capitalize on with respect to that.
Mhm.
Thank you.
I do know I've heard from community members that they have gone on YouTube to watch it even the next day, watch some of our meetings. So I think that continuing to be able to post them is just going to help keep the community involved. And I think that would be really great to have.
I agree, Madam Chair. I think it's a good idea, and any way we can keep people informed is a great idea. You know, but some of these things as you go on, you're always surprised at how expensive they are or may not be. But certainly we want. I'm pleasantly surprised at how many people are watching these meetings, and definitely want to keep that going.
And Liz, I would like to thank you too for putting together all of this stuff and running the slideshow today. It's very helpful.
Thank you, Liz. We had a lot of things there at the end, and I appreciate all your help. It's always a challenge to get all these things together, and I'm sure a challenge for you to organize. So thank you.
Yep.
And you will be posting everyone's slideshows on the city web page.
Yes, I can put this whole document, everything you saw today is in one document, so I can post that up to the web.
Great, thank you. Mm-hmm. All right, does anyone have any other questions for Liz? All right, then we're going to move to our final one today. Director Riley, take it away. Wait, you're muted. Yeah, okay.
There we go. I think mine's going to be pretty quick here. Not much of a difference than last year. I mean, not asking for anything new, and it's pretty simple. I mean, does anybody have any questions about what I have in my budget? I believe it's page 17.
Page 17 looks like FEMA grant fund.
Maybe Tim has changed his
section.
job, right?
Yeah.
Getting us some federal money, Tim. All right.
Yeah, really.
17 of the expenditures.
Yeah, wrong
Oh.
section.
There it is. Tim, can you confirm that the legal wages, the change is based on annual raises, or what is that change based on?
Yes, it's based on the same 2.5% that went across the board, I believe. Is that correct, Greg?
That is correct.
That
Yes.
is correct. Mhm.
Yes.
You.
We had 2.5% increase for 2020 and 2.5% increase for 2021. Same as all the other employees. I believe the mayor's in the process of submitting or preparing legislation to send up to council for your review.
With respect to the wages, I'd like to point out to council that last year that Tim, based on the challenges we had with coronavirus, he did not bill the city for any of his time he spent on labor negotiations. Per the ordinance, that's something that he can do. We were involved in negotiations with AFSCME and the police department, and I appreciate his consideration in that. And then also Prosecutor John Castell, when we had to close the senior center, we had limited staff there, but we needed assistance in delivering meals. And talk to John and see if he could, and I was concerned. I mean, some of the staff that we had laid off from the senior center, they were more than willing to continue to come in to help. I was just concerned, because of their layoff status, and they didn't want to affect their benefits, also any type of liability with the city. I wanted to have an active employee doing that. So I reached out to John, and he helped us out. So he came in a lot of Wednesdays and delivered meals to our seniors. And so that shows you that some of the lawyers do have a heart. I think that most people don't believe that, but I really appreciate Tim and John's. Those are the type of things that people did here that not many people know about. And I just wanted to point it out to you and thank Tim and John for that consideration and for that help.
For sure.
Thank you both.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
I'll let John know.
Right, but this is pretty straightforward. Does anyone have any other questions for Director Riley?
I do not.
I do not.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
All right. Talk to you later.
Thanks.
All right, so coming up on Monday, we're going to hear from Senior Life and Building. Before we end today, does anyone have anything else? Any other questions just in general?
Nice
Nope.
job.
Actually, if I may, I'm sorry.
Yeah, of course.
My apologies to all of you. Greg, could you give us a recap of what is happening with the legislation regarding work from home and where those taxes actually go? And maybe just give us a understanding as to how this could or could not affect the budget if it does turn out that we can accept funds from those who are working from home as opposed to the cities where their business was located?
Certainly. So the lawsuit was filed in Franklin County Court of Common Pleas. My understanding is that is not going to be heard or will be heard in July of this year. The information I'm hearing or receiving from Rita and the tax administrators of the state of Ohio is that they believe it'll be a 3-year process. They think it's going to get all the way to the Supreme Court. So right now, Rita has taken the position where they are not going to refund any monies that are subject to the occasional entrant rule. They're going to hold those until the lawsuit is settled, but they fully expect it to proceed to the Supreme Court. I think whoever loses initially is going to appeal, and then it'll work its way up to the Supreme Court and be possibly 3 years out before it's settled. So we haven't budgeted for any increase or decrease in income tax this year. How it will affect Fairview Park is really anybody's best guess. That's an unknown. Rita's run some figures, but again, they're all estimates at this point. So we're proceeding as is this year. And again, what we're hearing is, probably a 3-year period here, a 3-year time frame before it's fully settled.
Okay, and given our small footprint of what I'm going to call work from home eligible businesses here in the city, do you foresee that we will have a net positive? Should that be one in Fairview Park's favor, a neutral, a negative? Like, I mean, if they're going to go ahead and allow people to get refunds based on working from home, do you think that would be a positive for us or a negative?
Through the chair, I don't know. I mean, part of me thinks that it'll be a positive, but then I look at McGowan, for example, and I drive by there every day, and there are minimal cars, parked, daily there. So there are, I think it's 43% of our tax revenue comes from individuals. So most of our residents will work in Cleveland. So if the plaintiffs in this lawsuit are successful, I imagine that these individuals that live in Fairview Park and work in Cleveland will ask for a refund to the city of Cleveland and then pay the balance of tax to Fairview Park. So we'd have a little bit of a net gain there, but then offset it with, what are we potentially losing from, say, employees at McGowan and other entities within the community. So that's the unknown. There are rumblings out there or beliefs out there that when the lawsuits settle, it'll just be, forward looking rather than, retroactive. So, but as far as what the impact will be, it's nearly impossible to project.
Thank you for at least trying to pull out a crystal ball today. We know that we have no idea what's going to happen with it, and it's best to proceed as is. I know there's a lot of residents watching that. I know from a fiduciary standpoint, we should be watching that, and I just was curious your suggestion on that. Thank you.
We've been very conservative in our revenue projections, as the mayor said earlier. However, I don't want everybody creating anxiety here, though, but our income tax collections for the first couple of months are lagging last year. So I have talked to the Regional Income Tax Agency about it. They want to wait till this month is processed and finalized, well, 1 quarter in, and then we can assess from there. So it could be just a timing difference, but we are lagging a little bit when we look at the first few months of 2020.
Greg,
I don't want to spread panic yet. It's fairly early.
But Greg, that's not related to the occasional entrant rule. That's just overall collections.
That's
correct?
Income tax in general, correct?
Yeah. And it's hard to predict, as Greg mentioned. I know that overall income tax collection will be down if this for all the municipalities. Certainly the big employment centers like Cleveland, Independence, Westlake, Solon, Beechwood, but the feeling is that it would have a negative impact on some of the smaller communities as well. Mayors and Managers Association has a committee that's studying this, and so as we know more, they're monitoring the litigation very closely, and so as we know more, we will share it with you. And I know the finance directors are keeping a close eye on this as well. Thank you.
All right, well, this was great. I appreciate it and appreciate the conservative estimates on the revenue. So hope everyone has a great weekend otherwise.
Does anyone else have any questions or anything?
Good job, Bridget.
Nice
Thank
job.
you.
Yes, thank you.
All right, well, we'll finish this up on Monday, March 8th. And then I will close out the Finance Committee today at 11:55. Thank you, everyone, for spending your Saturday morning here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.
You
Thank
too.
you. See you Monday. Have a good night. Have a good day.
Weekend.
Bye-bye.